Hello and welcome to the final episode. It's bittersweet of the Arkane Retrospective, here to talk about Prey, which is not their most recent game release, but it's at least the last thing we're recording here. It's the last thing we're releasing before Redfall, which at the time of recording, Redfall is exactly 1 week out, and that is a very exciting thought. Hopefully all of us can play some multiplayer when this game's coming out, but I am the host, the Technopath, Dilma. I have, as with me always here on the Arkane Retrospective, Mr. Gluey McGlueface, Dante. How's it going?
It's going amazing. I'm really, what you said, bittersweet. That's what I was thinking. It's been kind of a long road. We started this like almost in the beginning of the year. So
It was like January, yeah.
A lot of hours of gaming.
Yes.
I feel like a professional arcanist at this point. So,
Ooh, I like that.
Be careful how you say it.
Yeah, seriously. No, it's been really cool to go through these, and I really, really love Prey. Not to spoil anything, so I'm really excited to get into this one.
We also have the Stab Fellow, the second Stab Fellow, but now he's the only Stab Fellow. Kirklin and Dante, welcome. How's it going?
Yes, thank you so much for having me again at the end of this long road that we've been on in the Arkane retrospective. And man, what a journey so far! I've played a lot of games I've never played before, and just a lot of great times, a lot of stressful and angry times. And I feel like to round it out here at Prey is something very special. I can't wait to share my thoughts on this one, because I somehow stayed away from spoilers for like even just like enemy types and stuff. Like I feel like
nice.
I went into this extremely blind, which is kind of crazy considering how long ago this game came out. But yeah, I can't wait to share my thoughts on it with you guys. And yeah, here we are at the end.
Yeah, and we have a special guest with us today with his first ever playthrough of an Arkane game. So that's going to be fun to hear those thoughts. But we have the Mimic. Travis, how's it going, my friend?
Not too bad. My chair was a little low, but no, I'm been excited. This is like I don't know. When did we see that trailer for Prey? This has been years.
Would have been
making.
like 2016, like E3 2016 or something like that.
And I kept wanting to play. I kept putting it off, and I guess good thing I did, because I got to be like a newbie on experience. So I was happy to finally dive into it. So.
Yeah, I think the closest you got was probably Deathloop. If that was actually a launch title for the PS5 like it was supposed to be, I feel like you might have picked it up, but just the way things worked out, it didn't end up happening. But yes, we are here today. If you are just joining us, haven't checked out the other episodes, we've gone through the entire catalog. We did Arx Fatalis, Dark Messiah, Dishonored, Dishonored 2, Dishonored Death of the Outsider, and then I re-released the Deathloop review, and I did a little bit of a remix on it where I took me and Kirkland's review, and then Dante, I took our conversations from the Game of the Year episode 2021, and I kind of stitched those together into a Deathloop monster and put that back on the feed. So that way, it felt weird to have this Arkane retrospective and then not have your voice, Dante, on an episode. So I had to,
had
to get you in
sure
there.
My thoughts were well represented.
Yes, for sure. And
Years
now
later.
here we are at Prey. So yeah, this is very exciting, because of course, Redfall 2 is from this same Arkane Studios. There's the two, locations, but this is from Arkane Austin as well. I'm going to throw over to Travis right away, because this is your first ever Arkane experience, and I want to know how that went. Tell us about your experience with this game.
So I wasn't sure with this one, because I feel like this is the one that I won't say gets talked about the least, but kind of. Like, I feel like I always hear Dishonored brought up, and that's probably because it was around you and Briggs a lot. But even Kirkland, like, he'd bring it up. And then Deathloop, I feel like that's the most talked about one. And I feel like there's another one I'm missing in between there. What else?
I think that's pretty much it.
Is that it? Then I feel like I just don't hear people. Yeah, I feel like I just don't hear people talk about Prey then, and it was very well received and well reviewed, and I think it was like on a lot of best of games. So I was much like Kirkland, where I was anticipating it, but I wasn't really spoiled. I just knew that it was a spaceship and there's some sort of alien type of monster, and there we go. So yeah, and all I've heard about Arkane is like their level design and the replayability and whatnot. So I had a very good time with this. I would say if there's anyone like myself, because I kind of play this game in two ways. If there's anyone listening to this, I want to jump into it at some point, never play it the way I did, where you streamline to the main campaign first. I said to Dylan very early on, though, I realized that eventually you would start to lose objectives. So what I did is save at certain spots. So I'd be like, okay, I want to beat the main game for this review, so I can have like an opinion on that, but then also try this out. So that's the first thing, is always don't streamline it. There's some games where it's like, you can just play the main way and go. So I did enjoy it quite a bit. bit. It was a little bit different because I've never played an Arkane game. You guys can fill me in as far as like the way in the first person that moves. It felt like a little different at first. I took some getting used to. It almost felt like oversensitive, and I might sound like a scrub, but I never really adjust the settings. I go, well, this is how they intended it, so I'm just gonna leave it. But it felt like I was like very quick, and even the art style looked a little bit different from Deathloop. Like it looked like of a past generation, but done very nicely, like on purpose. So that kind of took me off because all I had seen was very cinematic trailers, right? And I wasn't expecting that type of animation, but it was different. So you got a great voice cast in there too. So I really enjoyed it. I like the option of choice. I like the option of there's lots of lots of skill tree in here, almost too much, where it's like when I first got it, I was almost a little overwhelmed of like, hey, this is almost, I want a robust skill tree, but there's too much going on. And then they add like a 3 more and you're like, oh my gosh, like what am I supposed to do here? But eventually I feel like almost what Kirkland alluded to, I feel like the first 5 hours are a little challenging, even to the point where I'm like, oh, how much am I enjoying this game? But as it went on, I enjoyed it more and more. The only things I wish, and this was completely of like 6 years of build up and just on the trailers, I wish it was like a little scarier, because that's what brought me to the game when I saw those trailers, was it really felt like it had a horror aspect, where I feel like it has a little bit of that but not too much of it. And I wish the main story was a little more beefier, like I feel there's certain characters that we meet and then we don't literally see them till the very, very last 10 minutes of the game. And I wish there's lots more even if it's flashbacks or something, to dig in there. So I feel like the main story is a little light. I want to be a little scarier, but overall I had a very fun time with it. And I just love the ability of taking all these things, and I'm a sucker for manufacturing, getting as much, like once I found out there was these machines, like I'm collecting everything like that. I felt like a Pokemon collector with cards, except like I'm finding every banana peel I can, because oh man, I got no green. So yeah, I had a good time with it. I don't know if it matched my expectations, but that's also 2017-16, so it's a long build up.
And those trailers were sick. Like those were really, really great trailers, and they were obviously trying to throw you off the scent of what the game truly is and all that. Kirkland, take it away. You've now collected all the Infinity Stones of the Arkane catalog here. How does it feel to play? You have every game now. You've played every single one. It's crazy.
I should throw in like a little asterisk there. I didn't get around to playing Mooncrash, so that's like my final. That's like my final Infinity Stone I need to collect, because I watched a video on it though, so I know what it's all about. So I'm very excited to get in there.
We'll talk about it a little bit towards
the
end. But
this was very, very special. Obviously, just like riding a high on Arkane games up until this point, and this one, as I laid out, like I really didn't know anything about it other than like that first teaser trailer that we saw at E3, and it's like, okay, it's pretty trippy, looks like it's in space. I feel like maybe I came over your house back in the early podcast day, Dylan, you were playing it, but like I didn't really see much or like remember. You're probably floating around shooting stuff. It's like, okay, cool, great. But man, like right off the hop, like it just got me sucked in for scratching the itch of, very much reminded me of like Alien, and just like that overall vibe of just things on a space station that you're kind of running from. The first time I ever played Dishonored, I immediately like thought of BioShock. I don't know what it was, but just something about it, probably the art style or like just the way that the guns work, it reminded me of that. This one, by far above all the other Arkane games, remind me of BioShock 1, and that is by no means a bad thing. I love that game so much. It's definitely my top 10 of all time, and this game just reminded me so much of that. Probably just the way that I'm going around the ship, the horror element to it. I know it's probably not Travis Snell level, but definitely there were some moments in this game that freaked me out, especially just playing at night, late at night with the headphones and everything, and looking around the corner for these creepy little monsters that are gonna jump out at you. And it's funny too, because like the first time I played BioShock, I thought similarly, where it kind of freaked me out, but I just loved it so much I wanted to keep playing it. So I had like a similar play style, where once I got like the shotgun and everything, I was just going like balls to the walls, like I'm Ash in Evil Dead, like like I was just facing it like head on, which kind of just pushed my playstyle in that category. I'm excited to just talk to you guys comparing different playstyles, because obviously like I'm sure you two have played multiple playthroughs by now of this one, and I can't wait to go through it again just for certain things that I missed. I feel like I did a really good thorough like going over of the game, but there definitely is some things that I definitely either would want to change how I went about it in the first time around, or maybe just do like a certain quest or mission that I didn't get to do in the first time. But yeah, the ending, I feel like I kind of had an inkling of like where we were going, but I still really, really enjoyed the choice aspect of it. It went so much deeper than I was kind of expecting, especially just coming off the other Arkane titles that we've done so far. Of just how many people you kind of interact with. I feel like early on in the game, it feels very like lonesome. I feel like you don't really interact with anyone for a good portion. So I was kind of surprised once I did meet like actual people. I was like, oh wow, okay, this is something a little bit different. But yeah,
it's like a Death Stranding. When it's like 20 hours in, you meet someone, you're like, oh, there's actually people in this world. I thought there was.
Are
like,
you real?
Yeah, I thought everything was fake.
But yeah, no, I was very, very blown away by this experience, especially just like, man, going in it as blind as possible. I feel like it made it very, very special for me because I don't know. It just very like just blew my mind. Just blew my mind.
Nice.
Can't wait to go into detail further, but yeah.
Yeah, so I'll throw it over to you, Dante. So obviously we both played this game. Well, I assume you
Yeah.
played it right when it came out. I know you've been busy in the last few weeks. I don't know if you've got a chance to jump back in, but yeah, what is your kind of just history with the game?
No, I replayed through the entire thing. I did.
You're
I did New
amazing.
Game
Love it.
Plus, so this is my second run through this game in full. I think I jumped. This is probably my third time playing it and my second time beating it. I really like this game. Like this is one of those like it scratches a similar itch, like Kirkland said, to like BioShock, which is an all-time favorite as well, or like very much like a Deus Ex or a System Shock if we're going like that far back. Like it definitely is Arkane's attempt at making more of a traditional sim, like what people I think look back at a lot of those kind of like sci-fi sims, instead of it being a little bit more like their own take on this. This feels like almost them throwing it back to what people recognize as sims of the past. Yeah, it really does kind of I think it becomes more impressive in your second playthrough, even because you get to see all of the different routes you can take, and it really does like open up in so many different ways, very similar to a lot of the other Arkane games. Like it is expected, but like something about your first playthrough, you're kind of beelining it down a particular path, or you have a very specific play style. And when you get to go through these games again, it's like, holy shit, there are so many options. And then the fact that this game has some like really wild story turns depending on which kind of route you go as well. Like you can follow January, you can follow December, you can follow Morgan. I mean, you can follow Alex. Like you can decide to be more of a you can decide to be more of a Typhon. You can decide to be more human, and like those aspects change how the environment is like affecting you entirely. Like all of the robots will have kind of like anti-Typhon aspects to them. So like the humanoid, the human placed machinery and stuff like that. Sorry, my dog is like on play mode. The human based like machinery is like trying to get you if you've got more Typhon based skills, or if you're more humanoid, you maybe feel a little bit weaker. You don't have all of these amazing Typhon skills that like make the game way more fun. You should definitely still go that route. But it changes the way that you move through the environment like really drastically, and I just I am impressed with all of the options in this game. The just aesthetics are sick. It like once again very alien like. Throwback to some of the best sci-fi of all time. I feel like the fact that you get to move around this ship that's broken in specific spots, and you have to go and do and fly around space to access certain parts of the ship, and like there's times when the entire ship is not accessible and you have to like fly outside for like long periods of time. How did you get this? It is it is really like one of the just coolest games, I think, still, like as far as aesthetics go, that I've ever played. Like I just really love all of the enemy types. I love the setting, and then all of the powers are incredibly cool. I think my only gripe with this game, it was my same gripe that I had with it the first time through, is like I think the weapons can get a little lame. Like you get like 3 real weapons and a melee weapon, and but it's really well offset by the amount of powers you get, so it doesn't bother me too much.
Cool. Yeah, I have a similar journey as you. Of course, played this game when it first came out, And then I think I started a couple more playthroughs, but never actually rolled credits again at the time. And then like a year later or so, when the DLC came out of Mooncrash, I played a bunch of that, which is really fun. So we'll talk about what that is kind of towards the end of this thing. And then, yeah, in the time since, I've always just been like, man, I love this game. It's so great. But it had definitely been a while since I had actually gone back to it. So playing through it again the last couple months has been a lot of fun. And I did a very limited type of playthrough, and I think I was just even more impressed by the game in terms of how well balanced it is if you play in these ways, because obviously you can like beat this game without like installing a single neuro mod, which is a very Arkane thing, of course, and Dishonored as well. The games are built that you can beat the game without any powers and stuff like that, and this game does that too. And I had a very fun, albeit challenging and sometimes even tedious kind of playthrough because of the way I did it this time. But I, came out of it more impressed by it. And I think particularly it was like going through those first areas again. It was like, oh yeah, I love this. This game's great. Really enjoy it. But then I think when it gets down to the last like 25% and the game is just super open in terms of like you can really just go anywhere, that's when my mind is blown at how good this thing is. And I think if this game did not have loading screens, which is an unfair thing to put on it, it might be just one of the single like coolest, greatest video game worlds. I think it's already quite up there, but if it didn't have those like blockades to ruin some of the immersion at times, I think it would be just one of the most impressive like open worlds if it was that, which it's not. But yeah, I really love this thing. Up to your point, Tante, too, I love that you can just go outside and float around the whole thing, and it's actually like logically put together in a way is really impressive. But down to those Arkane things of like just that minute-to-minute level design is fantastic. There's so much option you have in this game, whether that's how you build your character or how you navigate the environment, and then certain choices in the story. And I think this game truly is one of the greatest games in terms of just having meaningful choice all over the place. And I think that's a really impressive thing about it. So I love this thing very, very much. It was really fun to do another full playthrough of it. And let's get right into it. So I kind of want to just first talk to you guys about like your playstyle and stuff, because that's a big part of it is you have eventually you like get the neuromods, and you can start by putting in like the human neuromods, and then eventually you can start scanning Typhon, and then you can do the Typhon neuromods. And I think for a lot of people that almost feels like a taboo thing. Like, I don't know if I should do that. It feels like story-wise maybe that's not the best idea. I think my first playthrough I just picked whatever I thought was the most interesting and did it that way. And then this most recent playthrough I fully role play as a Typhon, and I only got Typhon abilities. I killed every human I could in the instance I saw them and all that. But yeah, how about I guess Kirkland and Travis? I'm curious what your guys is just like what playstyle felt right to you and how you were going through this.
I was definitely not killing people. I'll say that. I
did not either on my first playthrough. That was wrong. But now I'm trying to experiment. So
yeah, I was heavily into, because that's where part of the hangout was. With the powers and the Typhoness, I wish there was more story elements there. So that's why honestly I didn't go to it at first, because I wanted more of a grasp of why I should go that direction. So I was heavy into the repair and hack, because I was just so I got to, I think my first thing I did was just get up to level 4 hacking very quickly, so nice. I could just go through doors as quickly as possible. Like, and that this was in the sense of I wanted to make sure I beat everything. So it's okay. I wanted to have that. If I need to find a key card, I'll just go this way. And plus, there's just sometimes lots of enemy types. But then slowly but surely, especially near the end when you start, I'd say maybe after the back half or right going into the back half, you start getting into a lot of areas where there's a lot more enemies. That's where I started getting the Typhon powers, because those are a lot more easy to recruit, just loading time, waiting, opposed to, man, I got nothing for shotgun shells, I'm depleted, and I got a whole room of these things. And you can run as much you want, but eventually you're going to bump into something that you're going to have to take down or at least divert. So I think I was very much a 50-50. If you were to look at my final spread, I had a little bit, like probably a little bit more on the human side, but I invested in some big, my favorite one was probably the force field, where you like kind of like you hold, I can't remember what button, and you can kind of project where it's gonna be the little ball, and then it disperses and stuff like that. I had lots of fun with that. So honestly, if I did play through it again, which I think I will one day, I would probably go more just heavy power side, because I would take my time. I won't have to worry about unlocking doors. But I was very mixed beast in this one.
Well, I will say, just to sell Mooncrash real quick, I think that's one of the great things about it is in that it's like a roguelike mode, and you're you have 5 separate characters, and each one of them is like very specific. So you have like an engineer character, and most of their abilities are geared in that way. And then you have someone who's like full on into Typhon abilities and stuff like that. So I think it's actually maybe even a great way to, like, before you've even played the main game, just like experiment with some different playstyles and see what you like. It's a good way to get a little flavor of each of them. But yeah, how about you, Kirkland? What was your kind of predominant strategy?
Kind of like what Travis was saying, I feel like I was a little bit overwhelmed by just like the skill tree possibilities. So I didn't want to like veer in a very specific direction too early on. So I really was just doing like the repair, like the hacking one, just so that I could go into just doors. I feel
Anywhere,
like that's just I feel like that's just a thing like in my mind in games like this where it's like, okay, well, if there's the option to get through there, I don't want to be in that point and be like, well, I can't get through there because I just don't have enough neuromods or skill points.
You see all that loot in there, you're like,
yeah, I want to get in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I went that direction, and like I said, like once I got the shotgun, I was just like face tanking, so like putting stats to like my conditioning. I was kind of like role playing to a sense of like really like the scientific type character that didn't want to like go into the neuromod into the Typhon direction. There was a couple instances in like the late game when I found it justifiable, at least to my role playing methods of like, okay, this is dire straits, I need to start doing some like kinetic blasts or something, you know, get that anger out. But so like in hindsight, I feel like I wish I went into a more Typhon direction, just because of like, again, it's an Arkane game. The type of like combos and creativity that you can get with like the powers and just different ways to tackle situations. Because I was just like, yeah, like face tanking. I will say I absolutely love the detail of I can't remember which stat it was. It was like boosting your health, vitality, or whatever it was, and it like says what it does, and then after it, it's like just for lore purposes, it's like adds 25 years to your life expectancy. It's like, oh man, what a great detail to that. Like it just makes that immersion so much deeper on a very simple like, you know, plus to health, which I feel like it definitely didn't go unnoticed for me. And yeah, I just love the attention to detail there. And I don't think like now that I played through the entire thing, I don't think that the skill tree is too complex, because it kind of feeds it to you in a digestible manner. But to your point, Dylan, I wish I kind of did get that Mooncrash experience first to just know what my specific playstyle is, because you can definitely, you know, miss out in certain categories if you want to go through, like kind of like my Dishonored 2 playthrough. I feel like there's a lot of abilities that I didn't go through, like I didn't tap into the full potential what the character could do. But I mean, now that I have New Game Plus, I can definitely go in there and get max on all the abilities there. But yeah, I was impressed by the level of like Typhon abilities versus just more, I don't know, like nimble type abilities, the ones that you can just sneak around with or get into different areas or just hacking turrets and stuff like that. And that was very BioShock like, just the different levels of turrets and things that were in there that you're coming across.
Yeah, this playthrough that I did this time of like only Typhon abilities, the biggest frustration was that I never could increase my inventory space, and also that I could not repair anything. So I just had to constantly drop weapons, pick up new ones, and if I had the space, which was limited space, I'd try and carry like 3 pistols at a time, and I'd use the one with the lowest like state on it, burn it out, drop it, grab another one. So there was a lot of like, surprisingly, I didn't have to go back and forth too often, because eventually you get, you know, crafting recipes for almost every weapon. I'm sure you can get recipes for every single weapon. So at that point, late in the game, it's like, okay, I'll just craft new pistols. That's not too big of a deal. But that was an interesting challenge and limitation to not be able to repair the weapons. And I actually really enjoyed playing through it. I think that's why I was even more impressed, because I felt like how often and just where they locate, you know, new weapons all the time. I felt like I never really went that long without like having a glue cannon or something. Like I'd always find one within the next half an hour or something. So I was, once again, I was like even more impressed by the game because of those limitations. And then obviously just having like greater knowledge of the game at this point made it a lot easier for like, I think there was maybe only 3 or 4 doors in the game that I couldn't get to, like doors that are literally the only way to enter them is through a hacking point. But I mean, we can talk about just the literally like 30 ways you can enter certain rooms in this game. Like there's so many options in that way. How about you, Dante? Do you have like I don't know, I guess you played this game through twice. You did New Game Plus, so you start with all the neuromods that you had, right? And then you just add more. So I'm sure you were just a fucking menace on this playthrough.
I was ruthless. It was super, super fun. Yeah, so played New Game Plus this playthrough, and you get all of your neuro mods from the previous playthrough when you make it to Morgan's office for the first time. So he has a chest in there that you like open up, and it gives you like, I don't know, 30 neuro mods right off the bat. And my main goal was to pretty much put points into anything that would make this, or like create the path of least resistance for me throughout this playthrough. So it was to upgrade my hacking all the way, to upgrade the mimic skill all the way so I could like get through tight spaces, or just like be like do the mimic skill on a turret and just like tear stuff to shreds. That was never stopped being entertaining. And then also the strength skill, which allows you to move large objects, heavy objects, so you could just like move stuff out of the way. And then the one that makes it so you could, like the acrobat skill, I forget exactly what it's called, but it makes it so you can like jump higher. So I literally did not have a single door, obstacle, anything get in my way through this playthrough, and it was so enjoyable. I must say, like, it obviously there is something to having to choose, but man, there's something to not having to choose also.
Yeah, you're the key to the city. You can go anywhere you please.
Yeah, exactly. I was the mayor of Talos. It was just an absolute blast. Like my main way, no pun intended, my main way of doing damage was using kinetic blast. I think that skill is so fun. It's literally just like this contained nuke that you just like let off, and it just does this big kind of like yellow, like, I don't know, almost looks like a black hole explosion.
Right. Yeah.
Does a really, really
Which
good
just
damage
one
to
shots
Typhon.
phantoms at the end of the game,
Yeah,
when you get it,
exactly.
or when you get it fully leveled up. So that's
Feels
amazing.
So strong. Yeah, I felt like an absolute powerhouse, and it was really cool because I feel like in your first playthrough you have to really pick and choose what side quests to complete, almost to like, it feels like I didn't feel like in my first playthrough it was simple to get through, not simple, but like it was not easy to get through all of those side quests and make sure that like you saved all of the people who were living on Talos. And this one I was able to save like every single person. I was able to follow through with like a lot of the, I don't know, like the chef plate like side quest without any issues, and get to him in like a timely manner, and like just a lot.
That was
of
actually one thing that I felt like knowing that he's a bad guy and I want to take him out, I feel like that was the one thing I could not like cheese in some way, you know, because he when you first talk to him, he like opens up the little gate at the window, and like I tried to get so many things through that window and like, or like hit a keypad or something. I think if you had, the only way I could think that you could get in there is, I guess, if you had the remote manipulation skill, which just lets you like activate buttons from further away, the Typhon ability. I feel like if you had the max range one, you could probably like look and see the button to the door and like unlock it from there, which would be really cool.
There has to be a way to get to him quick. I didn't do it either. I kind of forgot, which was for the best, honestly.
About the twist of it, yeah.
Yeah, I was just like, oh yeah, this guy. I was like, I remember not liking him. I wonder why. And then I just kind of continue on. But yeah, I just felt like I was able to kind of fully experience everything in a playthrough, which I thought was really cool because I feel like it does a good job of making sure you can't do that in your first playthrough.
Right.
I think you can if you just like are a professional gamer, but
yeah, I mean there's so many tools. Like for example, the bolt caster, the crossbow, the foam crossbow. Kirkland, Travis, I'm curious, did you guys use that thing at all?
I tried.
No, I did not.
I tried.
so,
Yeah.
What did you try it on? Enemies?
Yeah, oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So the purpose of that thing is more so that it can activate computer screens like from a distance, obviously, or you can
okay.
hit buttons. So if you can like find certain rooms that are locked and you can like maybe smash the window out, you can like shoot a dart at the door, or you could shoot it at like the terminal, you know, the computer screen, and then like navigate the computer screen by like shooting darts at it. So
I'm excited to try that.
I feel like I did not use that at all in my first playthrough because I didn't know how it worked. I'm like, I don't want this in my inventory. This thing's useless.
Yeah, this thing's stupid. Yeah.
But it's
I didn't
actually
use
like,
it.
yeah, it can be really helpful. And it's fun because it's very janky too to like actually try and navigate computer screens with it.
It's a really smart way to, if you decide not to go the Typhon route, like there's a lot of like the security rooms that like the hole to like talk through, like you would talk through to the security guard, is aimed perfectly at the computer. So you can shoot the thing to like disengage the locks for the security panels.
That makes a lot more sense now because I finished the game. I was like, I did not use this at all. I just used it for parts. So
Piece of
perfect.
shit.
You're in the same boat as me in every Arkane game we've talked about so far. I'm like, what the hell? What? I did not know that did that. And like, I will have beaten this game. It'll be like my third time beating the game, and I still didn't know that mechanic worked that way. So you're not alone.
Yeah, Travis, did you ever use like you have your name is the Mimic? Did you use the Mimic Matter?
I actually never
much?
did. No,
that thing's the best. I love it.
What exactly does it do? Because based on the description, I was like, that doesn't fit my type of play style. You know,
I mean, if you had max hacking, you probably don't need it as much. But for example, those same situations with like a security checkpoint, you can like put a mug on the counter. Or you don't need it on the counter, and then you could stand on the counter, turn into that mug, and then like go through the little talking hole and like just break into the security station that way, and then like turn back human, open the door from the inside.
Really, that's
I
crazy.
did like a million times in this playthrough because I only had Typhon abilities, and that was often how I got, or like smashing a window somewhere, setting up like a series of furniture to make myself like a ramp that I could jump up as like a little mug. It's just so fun and so janky. I love doing that.
The physics on those objects is so amazing. The fact that like, okay, I'm a mug, so instead of like it just being this thing where I'm like sliding across, you're literally like rolling across the floor, and
then of course you have like a jump
every
button
time
too.
it hits the handles. It's so hilarious looking, and it never gets old.
Yeah, I never used that one either. It's funny too because I knew about that ability, but I thought it was just for the online mode, and then it wasn't until like later on. It's like, oh my god, you could get this entire single player experience. It makes so much sense now for like those small areas that you guys were describing. So that's definitely something I'm gonna be maxing in my next playthrough for sure.
It's like the rat equivalent for Dishonored.
Yeah, totally.
Little holes.
A lot of like the broken doors that like are really you can't like fit through normally. And then too, like, you know, the situation when there's just like a bunch of heavy shit in front of a doorway. I love too that there's so many ways that you can get through those, whether that's like often just bringing explosives over and then just creating like this big explosion, or I think my favorite is like just using a recycler charge and just like eating.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Debris is
so cool.
always satisfying. I mean, dude, the recycler charge, that's one of my favorite things ever in a game.
Yeah.
It's like
100%.
the little
It's
black
awesome.
hole it makes, shoots out all the gunk, and like you hear the tip tap tip 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 as it like everything's flying across the room. So satisfying.
You get to take out enemies and get like perks for it after, like little materials and stuff like that. And that's what's great. Yeah, it's anytime I could bust out, because even like some of the big enemies, it'll still sometimes take like 75% of the health, and it's just like. It's a game changer when you got one of those big ones, and then you got like 6-7 mimics coming, and then you throw it. It's just like, that was a go-to. And early on, it was shotgun shells, like making a lot of those. But then later on, I was making sure I at least had 2 charges, because I'd usually find one along the way, at least 2 in the basket, you know. And it was a very satisfying weapon to use.
Just reducing everything to Lego blocks is like, so cool looking. It's so funny. It's just raining materials.
And it's not like it's just like useless stuff that is dropping, you know, it's valuable. So I always had those on me.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we should just talk about that right now then. I think one of my favorite things about this game is the recycler and the fabricator are just so fun visually, of like putting all your trash in there, all the, you know, Typhon organs and all that, seeing it transform, the plunking sound as it comes out, and then like going to the screen. I love the computer screens in this game too. They're so fun to navigate around, whether it's just reading emails or going through, clicking on stuff, and then just like, crafting so many neuromods, so much ammo. I love those 2 things, and it makes the gameplay loop of like, as you said, Travis, like just picking up every banana peel and hunting around for stuff, and then like trying to be efficient with like, sometimes if you're low on mineral material, and it's like, okay, robots and like operators are really good for that, I would make like a stack of like 10 operators and turrets. I'd bring everyone in the loading zone to one spot and just throw a recycler charge and just reduce it all, get so much mineral material. It's never not satisfying. Even on a second playthrough, it never feels tedious somehow. I love the tactile feel of building in this game.
It's
Absolutely. Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, it's just a good example once again of like Arkane has done something for so long, and they have found a way to improve upon it. Like, there are so many items throughout Dishonored where it's like, okay, these things are useful, but this is just this useless thing I can pick up, I can move around, and I can do literally nothing with it outside of like throw it and maybe distract somebody. Like, this makes every single item that you come across useful. Like, you should be picking up almost everything or recycling almost everything, because it does have a utility at the end of the day.
And like I don't know what it is about Arkane, but I feel like it started with Dishonored, the first one for sure, but they just like nailed the dopamine hit of like picking up items. I don't know what it is. It's probably the art style or something, or like the audio cue that goes off when I grab something, whether it's a coin from Dishonored, but in here, just like any item, it just it has this like perfect little audio hit. And then like you're saying, Dylan, when you're at the fabricator and everything's just like raining down, it's just like, oh, like I hit the lottery. It's like I'm at the slots or something. Like it just makes me so happy. And like the animation is just so beautiful. But like I don't know what it is, but they've just nailed this like very pleasing aesthetic for things that you would interact with. And like you said, like you interact with the recycler and the fabricator so much throughout this game. It's something that even if they didn't have that, they would probably have like a merchant or something that you'd interact with. But this is just so much more pleasing because it feels again leaning into my scientific play style that I had for this one. And like it's just like, yeah, I'm breaking down these things to the minerals and then just recycling them or using them to fabricate something else. So I love that. And I did not get bored or just annoyed anytime I had to interact with it. Because I feel like that can happen for sure in games. It's like, okay, I got to pick up this. I have to go here to dismantle it just to get like more room in my inventory or more ammo or whatever it might be. But they really, really nailed it in just making it pleasing and fun and never a tedious thing.
And I feel like they placed them at reasonable amounts too, where it's not like they're so close where it just feels, oh, no matter what, like the next room I can just fabricate something and then easy play through. But then it still feels like hard enough where, man, I could really use a fabricator right now. But it's not too long, and eventually once you unlock everywhere you can go. But kind of that first half point, you're kind of at the will of, okay, I really hope there's something in this next room. And if there's not, one, you gotta play your style to that, but two, I feel like it's always a challenging like right amount to when it's gonna hit there, and then like I said, at the end it's kind of all over, but you got other things to worry about, like every bean in the world running after you. So
yeah, and sometimes they have them like knocked out too, so you have to use resources to fix them and stuff like that, which I could not do in this playthrough. But
it does a good job of the survival horror thing of making you feel at times, if you didn't prepare enough, not having enough shotgun ammo or not having enough pistol ammo. It doesn't just throw those things at you. One small gripe about the fabricator, and like Prey 2, if that game ever exists, like please just let me make like 8 shotgun shells at once instead of
I agree. Yes.
the one over and over and over again. That's the only problem I had, because I would literally get there and I'm like, I know I want 300. I have so many materials. I know I want 300 shotgun shells. Just give me it.
That is a totally fair criticism. My quick counterpoint is that at the one point in the game when you eventually you are not allowed to make any more neuromods, like you've expired your license and you can go on the side quest back to Neuromod Division, break into an office, and you can renew your license. When I did that, went to the next fabricator and made literally like 25 neuromods in a row because I'd been saving all my Typhon organ, whatever it was, the whole time. I was happy to sit there and click that button 25. And I eventually had so many on the tray that it's like I'm not allowed to build anymore. I have to pick them up before I can even spawn more. They were just overflowing over the top, and just like can't imagine how Morgan's feeling as I stabbed these things in my eye 30 times in a row. But that felt really good. I got some really great powers after doing that.
Yeah, I'm sure that got old for him eventually.
Oh, yeah.
This constant, like his eye must have been just messed up by the end of this game.
No way it heals fast enough.
No way.
Especially Dylan's route. 25 back to back.
No, I feel like that. I mean, that first. The first time you do it, has like an actual animation for it, which is always like I'm sure for you, Kirkland, you do not.
Oh
know that's not your kind of thing. It makes you a little squeamish,
very
right?
Dead Space 2, like super unsettling.
Right. And like just that like first initial viewing of that, I feel like it gives like consequence to like what the neuromods are, and like right out of the gate it's like, okay, this is something that is going to be taking a toll on the character. I feel like they could have explored that a little bit further. I don't know, maybe just tweaking how like if you have many neuromods you got just, I don't know, super less health or something like that, like whatever it might be. But still for the initial system of what the neuromods were, especially just comparing it to like how they did it in Dishonored, like, man, hats off to them. Like, they really made this unique and fitting to this sci-fi like space version of getting powers. And I feel like all the explanation around it just really worked for me. It's just on gameplay wise, I think just for like the if I wanted to go super hardcore mode, you know, if there's like a difficulty slider that like just makes the consequence of using the neuromods a little bit more intense. But again, that's kind of splitting hairs there. I'm really impressed with just the overall neuromods.
Yeah. I guess, you know, one thing that I think is almost like quietly a consequence that I think is pretty cool is just the story implication and how you are judged at the end of the game, not to skip to the end, but whether or not you installed Typhon neuromods, how many you installed, if you only installed Typhon neuromods like me. Like, there's lines of dialogue for all of that. And I think that is pretty cool, but I think you're right. There's definitely some logic that's missing. Like you mentioned that there's like 25 years added to your life, and that's cool, but it's like it doesn't really make sense to like how installing an neuromod would make you be able to pick up a heavier box. Like, I don't know if that ever truly made sense, and I don't know if it ever makes sense why one thing would cost 8 neuromods. Like, how is that? I guess is there only like a certain amount of info that can be held on each one? It's something that you kind of just let it go because of, you know, game balance reasons, but it doesn't really make a ton of sense.
What is this neuromod economy? Yeah, there's another like little story implication, but it's another one that I think also gets like left off the plate very quickly too. Is like Morgan constantly losing his memory during the testing. Like, is it just because they're flashing his memory every single time they're doing like the Men in Black like thing after every time he's doing a testing run, or is that because he is using so many neuromods that he's actually losing his memory?
Yeah, I think there is an element to it of Morgan going crazy, but I don't think it's necessarily that he has so many neuromods installed at that point. I think it's just like mind wiping themselves as many times as they did kind of drives you a bit crazy, and then obviously you're not able to form new memories as well. But there is definitely some commentary on that just from reading terminals or listening to audio logs and stuff. A lot of people commenting on the mental state of Morgan, which is clearly deteriorating from like this person that was maybe once respected but is just seen like kind of gone off the deep end in a way without being too explicit about it, I guess.
Another Arkane specialty nailed here. Like, so much good stuff to read and listen to throughout this entire game.
Oh yeah.
You could spend hours upon hours just digging into just terminals.
Yeah, I guess I just on that point of more, because that does get brought up a lot of Morgan being, and I played as the Lady Morgan, so that's if you hear me refer to her as a her. There you go. Which I thought was odd. I didn't know that if you play as the male version, January is a male, and if you play as a female, January is a female. I find that very odd. Like, I wonder why the choice was made there. But I wish there was
a voice, right? It's the character's voice.
It's like supposed to be.
I guess so. Yeah,
it's like a synthetic version of your voice.
Yeah, like a. Yeah. Good thing I had that theory, but I never know, so I missed that line there.
Confirmed here live.
Confirmed. There you go. Yeah, I wish, like Dylan says, they kind of almost refer to the character being like erratic, or like you said, once well respected. But I don't think there's enough shown throughout the story from your point of view. Maybe other than when you get to the ending and you make certain choices. And I guess Dylan was killing people, but I still feel like it's different for me. Like, I still get that commentary, right? And I just played as like a good old soldier in a way of like, I'm gonna help people and get through and stuff. I never felt like my character did anything like, wow, like there's some sort of choice. And even in the past, so I wish there was more dived into that for me with Morgan. I wish there was a few more gray area choices that you had to do, or something, or some more reveals. But really, it's just like, okay, their mental stability is taking a beating, but I didn't feel like my character was a because it just feels like and I'm hanging around lots of other people. Like, there's that one part, it's more in the middle game, when you have to get all the turrets and you open up the door and stuff. And it doesn't feel like there's enough characters that are very suspicious of you. I'm just like, oh, thanks, Morgan. Like, it's very video gamey. And I wish there was a bit more of people reluctant to talk to you, you know?
Well, they started firing at me on site, I will say.
Oh, really? There you go.
Based on how I killed people at that point. And it was full Typhon mode, pretty much. So yeah, they just instantly took their pistols out as soon as I walked in that room.
Jeez Louise.
There is really great quest line that I think makes you question Morgan's morality throughout, like his past and his current morality. And it's the I'm gonna butcher her name, but Michaela Illusion. She's the chief systems engineer.
Right.
And you learn about how they were doing tests on her father, and you have the moral choice on whether or not you let her know if you're going to continue to use her and her skills and not tell her what you have done to her and her family, or you do tell her and you have to like deal with the potential repercussions of her not wanting to help you anymore. She will still help you if you are honest with her, which is good. So it maybe doesn't feel like there's this huge shift either way, or maybe I've always told her, so maybe if you don't tell her, she finds out, and that's like that's you taking the wrong path, bad end. But there are moments when people are like, oh, Morgan is just all he cares about is this project, and he's a bit unhinged. And you can kind of role play that a little bit through some of your quest line, but I think they do just kind of give you more of the option to be a good guy or a bad guy in those situations, and less so like look back on his dark past.
Yeah.
And people have like nasty opinions about him on the ship. Most people seem to respect him for the most part.
Right. Well, maybe while we're here and talking about this, like we could just talk about kind of this ending, the post-credit reveal, and how that changes, I guess, the perception of things that's going on there. But and of course, this is going to change greatly based on the choices you made. But essentially, in the post-credit scene, and there's tons of things with the actual ending in terms of what happens with the ship, so we can talk about that too. But I guess the post-credit reveal is that Alex kind of wakes you up and is having this conversation and reveals to you that you have truly been in a simulation for the instance of this game. Earth is lost to the Typhon already. The Typhon have completely taken over, and they've been running tests on this Typhon, trying to find kind of, I guess, a link between humans and Typhons, a way to communicate. This is the way I understand it, at least. Trying to find a way to communicate to the Typhon using this intermediary who is this Typhon who they're running tests over and over again using the memories of Morgan to recreate Talos 1. And I think that's actually really cool in a way that the game kind of contextualizes doing multiple playthroughs. In my playthrough, where they're just like, yeah, this was a fail. We like this is whatever we did here did not work at all. Like, you know, let's zap them and try again from scratch kind of thing. But then obviously if you were more of a good person, then you have a final choice there on what you want to do with Alex when he puts his hand out. But yeah, I'm. How did that twist hit you guys? The kind of it's all been a simulation sort of thing.
I think initially I was a little bit like undecided on it, and then I think initially like just brewing on it, I was still like a little bit uneasy on it because it almost makes it feel like. Now, Dylan, like your comments just now kind of like pushed me on the other side, because I initially I was under the impression that like, okay, well, all my playthroughs doesn't really matter. It's just like a simulation in the end anyways. But like to your point, like if you do just play a full evil character, like the conversation is more of that the test was a fail and it went that route, and it does make it a little bit interesting thinking of it that way, that it's just like thousands of simulations that they just keep running. Those are the playthroughs that you are playing. I loaded a save and like just to see like the two different endings this time. I didn't do that on the other Arkane retros. I've been learning here right at the end to do that. And the conversation actually didn't change at all, but I think it's because I wasn't super hardcore evil like the entire playthrough. I just made the final decision a little bit differently, but
which final decision are you talking about?
Like for destroying the ship or doing the what's it called, the
null wave.
The null wave thing. So like I reloaded both those endings just to see what happened, but then at the end of the credit, like it is still the same conversation with like reaching his hand out or just kill everyone. And in that moment it was just like, well, every time I play this game am I going to come to this point? And it's just that's the way it goes. But I mean, you just kind of answered that and says that it's a little bit different there. So I think I'm still like a little bit undecided like for or against it, but it is definitely a really interesting concept of just attaching the simulation theory on this game that's already very heady, very sci-fi-esque. So yeah, I don't know. It initially a little bit uneasy on it, but maybe in the future I'll really grow to like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think. I mean, just to comment on that, I feel like one. I don't know if you can truly see the different endings by just like reloading to save at the end. I feel like it really is taking actually like quite a lot of choices. And if you play through it again and you do a lot of different choices and you don't really see much of a difference, that's totally fair. But I feel like, a big part of it is like, how did you treat those 4 people who are then like, the robot operator voices? Because for each of them, there's like, obviously you can save them or you can kill them. And then for like Michaela, for example, there's that extra side quest. I think each of them maybe have an extra side quest you can do. So that's something they'll comment on. And then in terms of the ending itself, like, yeah, you can destroy Talos 1 or not. You can deploy the null wave or not. And then you can, Morgan can die or Morgan can escape to Earth, Earth, either via shuttle or via escape pod. So there's a lot of different permutations, and I think you can, pick and choose how you do each and all of those things. And it might just be like, okay, one line is different here because of this choice you made with Dr. Igwe or whatever it is.
Right.
But yeah, I think that I can't even really say for sure. I think it's cool that there is a lot of different ways, a lot of things that could, trigger the ending and stuff like that. Yeah, at least I feel like I did, a pretty much like a full good person playthrough my first time through, and then this was like full evil, and I'd be now in more playthroughs I would probably want to go somewhere down the middle and experience a bit of both and see what that is. And then yeah, I mean the decision at the end when Alex takes your hand, you can like kill him or just shake his hand. Like I don't know if that's a great like final decision or anything like that. And I think too with the ending is like, man, those ending cutscenes of like the station blowing up and stuff are fucking awful. Like that, the budget, you could tell the budget ran out there because all of those like little ending cinematics just look terrible. And I think that does put a big damper on the ending.
Is it supposed to be like, I agree, but is it like meant to once again be a throwback to all of these other Sims? Like this is how all of the Fallouts end. This is how Deus Ex ends. This is like historically how these types of games end.
I don't know. It looks like 480p, so I don't know if that's what I don't know if that was intentional or not. Maybe it was.
Valid. Yeah, the video, maybe the compression on the video, not great, but just the, all right, like chopped and screwed version of the ending, just depending on the choices you make.
Yeah.
I think that probably is just tough.
Mm-hmm.
I can confirm that that's kind of how those endings work. Like it is based on those 4 specific characters and you're like how you have gone through their side stories, because they're essentially, those operators are judging that Typhon in that moment, and if he passes the test, then he is, or she is offered the opportunity to be the bridge from humanity to the Typhon, because like the Typhon have already taken over Earth, and the whole goal for Alex in that period is like, all right, we need to find a way to make them coexist with us at the least, because otherwise it just means like humanity is gone. So there is there's a win condition, I guess. There's a good ending. I wonder if there is kind of a neutral end in that situation. Like obviously, the before credits sequence, there's like all those different ways that you can finish the game, but like ultimately, no matter what, Morgan's dead. This Typhon is your actual main character at the end of the day, and the choices you make for there, it's like Igwe, Aleutian, Sho, and Elazar. Those are like the 4 operators in front of you. They get to judge your fate based on the decisions you made.
Yeah, how about you, Travis? How did you feel about that kind of reveal?
I like it in the sense for what you talk about as a practicality for replaying it again. I'm not a fan of it story wise because it's hard for me to get it into it was all dream ending when it's just been done many a times. And I think for me, I would have preferred that to be almost, and maybe my answer will change if we ever do get that Prey too, because I feel like the unfortunate thing is they kind of leave like I liked the story enough, but it's like, oh, what they're setting up here is really, really interesting. But it's like, but if you never get that, it's almost like, hey, the really interesting aspect of the story, that's not a part of this one. I almost wish, and maybe that would need a bigger budget, so that's why they didn't do it. I wish there was an amalgamation where this was maybe like a middle point reveal, and maybe you played a game to a certain point, and then that happened. So I was not a big fan of it, but I'm just not a fan of that ending in general for most media nowadays. Like, other than like if you have something like an Inception where it's literally built around dreams, and it's kind of like okay, I understand here the whole it was a dream, which it was a simulation, kind of the same idea. It didn't hamper the gameplay experience, and luckily I guess for me, like, I wanted more from the story, so it wasn't like I absolutely loved the story and it was like a shot to the heart. It was just kind of brought down a little more notches for me of okay, because even the stuff with Alex, it's like, oh, this journey going with this character, whatever fate happens, they're just there again. And like I said, any reason I want to replay this game is just for even the multiple endings. It is good on practicality, but at the same time, it's almost like it doesn't really matter to me, because now when I go and play and kill these bad guys, now I feel even like less remorse. It's nothing like there's some games where you can do that and you feel bad because, oh, I'm killing this person, I'm killing this father, this person that has like a brother on the ship. Now it's just they're just all computers, so it doesn't really, I think I lose some of that emotional weight for the game for me.
Yeah, that's fair. Let's take our quick break, and then we'll get to what Kirkland's next thought is. Kirkland, take it away.
I was excited. Yeah, I just wanted to add on to what Travis was saying there, how like I think for me, my favorite portion of the game was, I mean, other than like the mind trippiness and just questioning my own sanity of the character. Can I trust myself? Can I trust these characters I'm working with? Can I trust anyone? All of those questions while I was playing it was really just like exploring the ship and like coming across those terminals or like touching a corpse that just has like a terrible just fate occur to him. He's like half in a locker or something, head just like shrunken, and then I'm reading like his audio log on just like getting a glimpse into his life. Maybe he's interacted with Morgan up until this point, maybe not, maybe they're talking behind the back, maybe they're just like talking about things that they do on the ship, like all of that stuff. I never wanted that to end. Luckily this is a pretty lengthy game, so I was really able to get immersed, but I think I was just eating all of that content up and just, like I said, didn't want that to end. So then once we got into like actually facing Alex and like getting to my end goal, I think I was sad that I was like past that point. So then maybe I was just in I don't even want to say like a sour mood near the end, but it was just, I knew I was approaching the end. I maybe wasn't in love with the idea of where I was going. Like I had a suspicion that the Typhon was in me, but again, that's not really the main like end result of the game. Like it's mostly just I feel like taking the Typhon aspect out of the character doesn't really change too much about like the ending, because that is like an end credit sequence. But yeah, I don't know. It was probably just many other things that led to the end that just had me a little bit less satisfied. Maybe like Travis, I wasn't too in love with the main story. It was mostly just the world building that I was in love with there. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. The world building is definitely much greater than the like individual main quest story of this game. Even with multiple playthroughs, I still feel that way. I think, and I think too, like, you know, the game starts out really strong. It's like a really, really great opening. When you smash the window in your apartment, or there's so many ways you can like, break out of that first room, and that reveal, and you know, with the, what is that? The Looking Glass tech, which of course is a throwback to, I think Thief is the studio that made, or Looking Glass was the name of the studio that made Thief, which this game is paying homage to, or System Shock, one of those, I forget.
System Shock,
It's a cool reference nonetheless. But yeah, that's such a great reveal, such a great strong point too. Obviously, that's what a lot of these like E3 trailers and stuff were showing you, those sequence of you playing this day over and over again, and Morgan's eye is just red, red as a just blood clot kind of thing. So that's a great reveal. And then I think another one that happens very early on is when you realize that you're on a spaceship too, right? That's an amazing reveal when you go out to the lobby and you can see the moon and the Earth in the background. Yeah, that's amazing. But then there's not really a moment like that again until like the end credit scene, right? So I think to Travis's point, like if that reveal had somehow happened maybe in the middle of the game, or even like 75% of the way through, and then there was something else to do afterwards, I don't know what it would be, whether that's Earth, whether that's like what current Talos one actually looks like. I'm not sure what it would look like, but that could have been a really cool sequence. And like Mooncrash, great DLC, but it doesn't add to anything to what the story is here. It gives you a bit more world building and stuff, and it is a cool area and whatnot. But it doesn't really, get you deeper into that simulation element of the main story. You're not playing as Morgan Yu anymore. Well, you never were, I guess, but yeah.
You never were, yeah. But I think that's the, like Kirkland said, you just said, Dylan, where that's the biggest thing with the world building that is a pro, because I think when you have a video game, movie, TV show, when you think of the name and you automatically feel that setting, that's when it's done its job, right? And what I like is it reminds me a lot of Alien or Blade Runner, or like the Batman just did it last year, where like you look at the Batman, it takes place in current day, but his tech's really old, but it's futuristic. And that's what I love about this, where it's not a super shiny ship where everything looks sleek and it's like looking like, just like, oh, everything is. And obviously in the simulation, they've been on, in space probably for a while and stuff like that. But I like that there is newer looking tech, but it can look aged or it looks lived in and stuff like that. It's not just Star Wars prequel where everything's very nice and shiny. And lots of space games do that. And I feel like when you do that, you lose all sense of character then. If it's just everything looks, and it's cool because like, oh yeah, this is the future and you do all this tech, but like you got to give it even just the color scheme and the feel of it. So that's one of my favorite things about the world building aspect is the actual ship and the gear, as far as it's futuristic, but it doesn't look futuristic to them because that would just be their current day age stuff. I love future tech that looks lived in, and the game's riddled with that. So
yeah, I think the distinction between the areas that are supposed to be, I'll say, like the customer facing areas, like the parts where people live and like the people who are not the scientists, like spend their day to day, are beautiful. Like the Talos One lobby, so elegant, like those massive, like they're not even like chandeliers, but they're just some strange slab tech, and you definitely get a lot of Dishonored vibes in terms of some of the furniture and stuff. But like that stuff is beautiful. Even the bathrooms are like, oh, this is the most clean bathroom I've ever seen in my life, unless there's like a dead body on the ground or something. But then like the opposite of going to like the power plant or the waste management area or the guts, and seeing those areas that are more for like the engineers and stuff, and you can see all the space tech, and that's where everything feels a lot more bulky. And I like that there's kind of those two elements of the ship too, where like the places that are for people that are supposed to look nice and elegant, and then like the places that are strictly for a purpose, and they can just be an ugly old spaceship that you've seen before.
I was thinking about like we're at the end of this like retrospective, right? And like if I had to pick one thing that maybe is Arkane maybe has the most trouble with, I think it is like sticking the landing on an A plot. Like they have this like start to finish story that they're trying to like get you from point A to point B in, and like I'm so much more interested in all the little nooks and crannies than I am in the actual main story. Like in every single one of their games, I think at this point, like I would much rather dig into the weird stuff that has to do with Granny Rags or the Outsider and like dig into like reading about those characters than I actually feel like blown away by the presentation they're giving to me in those like in the main storyline. And I think Prey maybe suffers from it the most, because there is so much interesting stuff going on in like behind, like in the side stories that they have like just placed throughout the ship, and the kind of storytelling that they do just by like you find a like the voice like memos that are like sat next to these dead bodies, and then you get to look around this space and kind of get to piece together what maybe happened to these people. I like constantly will find that stuff more interesting than this big twist that you were a Typhon all along, or you're trying to get to your brother and save your brother at the end of the day. Like those stories are much more interesting. And I feel like that's always been their strength. I almost wish that like maybe in the future Arkane just kind of like throws you into a world. There is not this like huge, outside of giving you a reason to exist in the world, the way that it's telling the story is almost like in a Dark Souls sense, where it's just like, okay, I'm just like absorbing information.
I feel like that could be Redfall. It kind of seems like
so.
That might
I
be
hope
going
so.
on there.
Like I think there is they have a strength in storytelling. I just think the way that they've tried to express that so far hasn't necessarily been like
I feel like
10 out of 10 I'm
Dishonored.
looking for from them.
I feel like Dishonored 1 is maybe the best one that truly sticks the landing of having like a great plot all the way through, and it's not like this incredibly well written masterpiece or anything like that. But I think it like the ending actually feels good, whereas even like Dishonored 2, we were all like, I didn't really like that final mission. Delilah doesn't really work so well, and I think to your point, like Dark Messiah arcs have that. I think Deathloop kind of goes all sorts of directions for people in terms of that, and we don't need to spoil it because Travis hasn't played it. But yeah, I think that's a pretty good observation, and it's not maybe not a coincidence that Dishonored 1 is their still most popular and revered game, is the one that maybe was the most consistent all the way through.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't even think of that like at all. Even going through these retros is that like reoccurring theme that maybe the main plot point is like never regarded as the best part of the game. Like even Dishonored 1, I'm with you, Dylan, that I think that is the best one that they've done so far for the main story, but that's still not my favorite part about that game. Like it's probably actually like playing the game and interacting with how creative I can get with the kill moves or whatnot. I do really like that story, but by no means is that what calls me back to the game to just experience that story again. And yeah, it's kind of funny because I feel like on all of these games, when we've talked about the ending, we haven't even gone into like much detail on the ending because it's just like, yeah, that's what happened. Yeah, okay, it was all right, I guess, but we have so much more to talk about on, I don't know, just a certain level or certain side characters.
Yeah.
So yeah, great observation for sure, Dante. And I'm curious just to see if that is a reoccurring thing for all their future games. So I know Redfall is very different from everything that they've done so far, but who knows? We'll see.
I just think their environmental storytelling's so good that they just need to lean into that, and they will have no problems going forward. They just got to like see their strengths.
And I think like Dylan saying with Redfall is maybe if Redfall's just, hey, eventually the main story's just got to kill like the vampire, like whatever it will be, like the big thing, right?
I think the hook so far is like there's 4 vampire gods you got to take out, and I'm sure you can take them out in whatever order you want. And then like there's a 5th one that unlocks, and you got to go beat him, and that might to all of our points, like that might be the best way for them to do it, really.
Yeah, because I think that's like what Dylan said when the first, even the like before the window smash, the testing of you going in these rooms and like, okay, hide, and it's just a chair. I think that's the thing where it's like the hook's so good, you're like, okay, what's gonna be the climactic? And the climactic is like, oh yeah, it's serviceable, but that's where it might be better. Like you talk about Souls, like for me, I don't have experience there, but with Elden Ring, it's like that where it's just okay. There's no like eventually there will be a main boss, but it's not like you have to get from point A to point B. You kind of get to tell your own story, and there is an end point to the game, but and I think honestly it would serve this game a little better as far as you just wake up and your goal is just to save as many people on the ship or yada yada. But there is like this mystery, so you're kind of like, okay, what is behind the like the same thing. You want to get to Alex. You haven't seen Alex this whole game. You get to this little bunker, which I appreciate, just stacked with food. Everything. I like that. I love when
guy, man.
He is a big guy. Yeah, I love when you go. There's just I can't remember the character's name, but the guy who's like hacking at his bunker. And it's just like this race of time where you got to get there, and that's like, and again, that's gameplay stuff that like you got to get there. And that guy destroyed me the first little bit because I didn't know what I was expecting. I didn't know he was just gonna turn on and shoot me, and I was very low health at that point. I was like, oh, okay, so that's what I'm dealing with here. And but yeah, I think maybe the Redfall. We'll see what they do, but and I'm excited at some point to try out the other ones. But yeah, I'll be trying Redfall at least. So
yeah, can anyone remember the name of that officer guy? I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's kind of
cool
like
name.
the final boss almost. And
Yeah.
I had a very funny
Yeah,
experience
yeah,
fighting him
what's
this
his
time because I just
name?
kept mind controlling him over and over again. So I would mind control him, and then his robots would start attacking him, right? Because he was like fighting them.
Oh,
so I just
no.
did that like 4 times, and I didn't even touch him. He just like he was fighting these robots, and they eventually won, which is hilarious. But I didn't realize this till I was looking into it after. But like you can like knock him out, take him to the neuromod division, and like remove his neuromods, and then
That's what I did.
You did that?
Yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah, I did.
I love that.
Yeah, so he actually is he leads the escape pod essentially. He pilots the shuttle to get away at the end. It's a very nice, like warm, happy ending for sure for him because he wants to kill you. And then as soon as he gets it out, because it like wipes his memory, I forget the character that's with him, kind of.
I think it's Eway, maybe.
Spar.
Yeah,
I can remember that. That's the name of the operator, but I can't remember the actual name of the guy.
His last name's Dahl. Dahl.
Yeah.
As soon as he spoke, I'm like, dude, that's Slackjaw. Like, like these reoccurring voice actors throughout these Arkane games. I just heard Slackjaw right away. But yeah, no, it's really cool because as soon as he like gets the neuromod out, he's like, oh, Morgan, you look like shit, and he's like totally on your side after you like just try to kill him. Yeah, I use the like the stun gun. I forget what it's called, like the disruptor pistol, maybe.
Yeah.
I love the aesthetic of that weapon so much. Maybe talk to it in a future episode, but I went that route, and I'm pretty satisfied with it because he definitely leads. Like if you go the route of escaping with Morgan, he's there in the end. So it's kind of cool to have your whole posse there.
It's wild
that's
that
really
he's
cool.
like sent by your parents.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right?
I feel like
Absolutely.
that's not something that's really explored. I feel like they
Yeah.
maybe could have done more with that. I don't know.
Oh, for sure. Like they could definitely go into the greater company, right? Which is like apparently like the U's parents, which is
Yeah,
like,
you can see the
this
name
weird
U all
kind of
over the
nepotism that's happening within this company is pretty wild.
for sure. Yeah.
But maybe that also is due to the fact that like Alex is actually just like running this whole thing in general, so he's just adding parts of himself to the greater story at the end of the day. I don't know.
Well, we were all talking about how the world building is kind of greater than that of the main story. So why don't we talk about some more? I love that there is truly like a comprehensible logic to all of Talos 1, where there is, the things like the habitation pods and the crew quarters and the cafeteria, and this is where people would eat. There's, of course, all the different science areas, whether that's, psychotronics or the neuromod division, which the neuromod division, like, is very much feels like a place that they are trying to, that's where they invite people to, like, it feels very friendly in that way, and like nice lobbies and all that. And the waste management, I love that it's just like a giant vat of eels, like, consumes all the shit and garbage, and that's how which is, of course there's like eels and stuff in Dishonored, so that's funny. And then of course there's a guy who's in the eel vat, and you can like find his body, and that's a side quest in the game too. But I love that I love that level of detail is something they thought through. And then of course like there's all like the power plant and just the logic of how this thing is powered too. The Arboretum is a great highlight too. I think it's when you finally get there, it feels really cool, and it's just obviously very visually quite different, but it makes sense too. It's like obviously a pretty bougie spaceship, and the fact that they are like, okay, let's make like a really just amazing garden so that people who are going to be up here for maybe the rest of their life can at least have some nice greenery and all that.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of Dead Space, and it's pretty interesting that like Dead Space the remake came out earlier this year, and it does also a very good job of creating these spaces within this ship that feel like they would, for something to exist this long term, these places have to exist to give these people some sort of sense of their life that they're used to. Like, it almost makes us like, it's interesting to think about like looking forward, like, are we gonna have like this Arborium, I'm not saying Arbitorium, right? Something like that.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's it. Yeah.
Second try. So they have like clean air and vegetables, right? Instead of just eating like freezer packed foods that are gonna like eventually go after a while. They're going to have to grow vegetables on this ship to make sure that they are maintained over a long period of time. And then finding these really interesting ways to deal with waste, because otherwise they would just be like vacuuming them out into space, which would probably be environmentally a little bit of a no-no. So
Yeah, and you think too, like,
creative way.
They're kind of intentionally just chilling around the moon. Like, it's not like they're going off into deep space where they could just shoot their garbage out and like it's who knows is ever going to see anything. But like like their garbage could even just make it back into the system or something into the, like,
jettison it back onto Earth.
Yeah, like shoot it into like Idaho or something like that.
Yeah, that. Oh, sorry. You're so.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was just gonna add on with the different sections of the ship that have their actual purposes, like the Arbitorium, and just like the different living quarters, the kitchens, and then like you said, Dylan, like there's the behind the scenes aspects of like actually running the ship. That's like all of just the different areas really reminded me of BioShock. BioShock does a good job at, I'm pretty sure they have like their own Arbitorium where BioShock is all underwater, so they have to like get air, so they have trees in this area. So like seeing those things were just very calling back to that game, which I absolutely love. But this one just seems like it took it to a whole nother level of actually thinking about like this is what you would need to have like a functioning ship, not just this is something cool to throw into Rapture that's just this really wild, weird place. So I like I said, I definitely thought of BioShock initially, but then it's like, oh man, they took it to a whole nother level because like there actually is great logic in this. Like I feel like they really had like a good amount of things that you'd probably need to have in order to have like a long-lasting space colony, right? And yeah, I was very, very just amazed by the different art styles of the different rooms. Like Dylan, you already kind of broke it down, but with like just the lobby, like very grandiose of obviously like welcoming everyone to this place, and then just how dirty and grimy some of the other locations can be. I really, really love Talos, and what a fantastic place to go exploring in.
One of their best settings, like they've consistently had incredible places to interact with, but like it stands on its own. Like it's hard to compete with Dunwall and Syria and Karnaca, right? Like these are some of the coolest places in video games still. Like, and they continue to do that. It makes me really excited for Redfall, which is probably going to be their most grounded, like, setting. Like, and I'm not worried about it at all. I think they're going to find a million ways to do super cool things in these environments because they have just, and they've been knocking it out of the park for decades now. Like, it's so impressive that they're able to produce these spaces that constantly just feel like better thought out than most video games that exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's the thing I would want to see the most. I'm not sure if that thing exists, but I'd want to see the preparation of them deciding of building this thing like in their minds, from that to paper to the design, everything like that. Because like what Kirkland's done about, it doesn't actually. It is a spaceship, but it doesn't feel like there's times you almost forget that. You know, like it does feel like you're in a mini town or something like that, or like a huge mansion, and that's a good thing with the levels. But that's what I want to see the most actually, of how did they decide, okay, what's going to go where, and that's the best part too, is the variation, because unless you're making a shorter experience game, like if you make a 5 to 8 hour game, you could have a spaceship with just a few little areas, and then, you know, if the plan is to escape, right? Like something like, I'm sure some of you have like played Gone Home, right? And that's like just a house. It's like, okay, you have a limited amount of rooms, and that makes sense because it's just a miniature journey. But with this, if it's going to take your time, you gotta. The rooms have to feel different. It doesn't. Even the stuff like just having a theater room is really cool. That's something you don't have to. They don't really do anything. Like there's one main quest where you go find a videotape, but just that it is there, it all feels lived in, and like a couple of you said, it just is things that make sense. So that's probably next to the gameplay. And honestly, I still think that for me, the world building and this is kind of combined. That's my favorite part of the game, is the world. Because like I said, whenever I think about this, there's specific locations now, like you talk about the eels, that I'll think about. Or the first time I got in a room where multiple doors are just broken, there's electricity everywhere. And that's the one thing where it helps us that it gets open later on. There was a part in the middle game that I was frustrated that almost every room always had a mimic or a bad guy, because I just wanted to take it in a bit more. So sometimes I wish there's a little more of that, of just like a a free roam mode sometime, of just like, hey, let me just take it in and look, especially when it'd probably be more annoying when I would get to an area and I really want to look, and it's like, I only got 3 shells left, I can't spend too much time in here. So that's my one thing, is like maybe I didn't need as many enemies always riddled throughout, or maybe a point where you would kill them and you could wait a little bit more till they came back. But that's just a testament to the kind of the world or like level design going on that I want to explore and look at it more. And I'm excited for, that's where I'll be very excited for a new game plus mode, because that's, I'm gonna really take my time. And then so that's where this game, I feel like I did do side quests and whatnot, but I definitely played a more streamlined version of it. But I'm excited to go in there and maybe be a bit more overpowered, and then kind of decide what I'm gonna look at and do. So
It's fun.
One thing. Oh, you go ahead, Dante.
I was gonna say it's just they take it to another step too, because all of these amazing spaces that they had to create, they had to make sure that it made sense when you were outside the ship as well.
yes,
Yeah.
very.
It's insane, like that, like everything connects so perfectly. There's lots of games where you end up doing like this thing where you end up outside of the space and you're like, wait, that shouldn't connect there. The cafeteria should be over here, and the grand hall should be over here. But for some reason, I'm able to access it from this side. Like, I feel like there's lots of games where I feel like these things just don't connect in a thoughtful way, and this is like perfectly placed. Every single section makes sense, and the fact that you can access every single one of these areas from outside as well just is like, I don't know, it's very, very, very cool.
Yeah, from a game balance side of things, I think they did a great job of putting just enough airlocks and having just enough ways to get between these zones from each other, and then they can play with that formula a lot where, okay, now the power's out, now the elevator's out, you can't go this way, or like this door, which would normally unlocked, is locked, and then obviously you have to go inside through to unlock all the airlocks before you can actually use them, which I think is a clever way to do it. But it's pretty impressive that this game doesn't have a fast travel, and instead you just learn the world so well, and then whether it's like a very quick and what you could probably do safely speed run almost through an area when you're trying to do something for a quest, or it's usually taking the shortcut, which is like going outside if there's an airlock that's like close to your destination and where you are right now. So I feel like that part of it too, and especially just on replaythroughs, playing through the game more, understanding it more, learning a lot of these pathways is like just a very satisfying element of the game. Let's take our next break. We'll be right back. Okay, we are back. I want to talk some more about some of the tools and equipment. We mentioned the recycler. We've touched on a couple, or the recycling charge. We've touched on some other things as well. But of course, one of my just all-time favorite video game tools, weapons, whatever you want to call it, because it is everything, is the glue gun, the glue cannon. I forget what the actual name of it is. Is it cannon or is it gun? I think it's cannon, right?
I think it's the glue cannon.
I think it's cannon, yeah.
And then glue,
Jellyfoam
obviously.
lattice organism obstructor cannon.
You got it. There you go. Perfect. But this is just one of the all-time great video game weapons in my mind because it is everything all in one. It is used for combat in a very fun way of like covering your enemies in all this just goo to slow them down so you can get a sneak attack strike on them. It's like blocking doorways so that certain enemies can't get to you and you can hide for a bit and get your bearings. Using it to stop fires, or if there's an oil spill, put that out, or stop an electrical current, or if there's a gas leak, block all that stuff. And then the fact that you can use it to just get all sorts of crazy movement options to get around. You can do so many things early in this game, early based on like what you're supposed to do, quote unquote, by just using the glue gun in really creative ways, by just putting blobs in different places. And that's something I always have a lot of fun doing, is just messing around with the acrobatic system combined with the glue cannon. It is just such an amazing tool. So that's spoiler, we're doing a ranking. This is like an easy top 10, top 5 for me in terms of Arkane's. And Arkane has so many great powers and weapons and tools and stuff, but this is like, wow, one of those great multi-tools in games.
The tools, it made it feel like almost like a sandbox for the Arkane genre of like, especially if you use that with what's like the shift ability that they add in this? It's not blink. It's like spectral dash or something like that.
Because shift is what's called Deathloop. Yeah, what is it called?
Yeah, I'm forgetting the name, but you could use like that on top of the agility, on top of the glue cannon, and you could just
dash.
there you go. It seemed like this is where they're like, hey, here's the tools that we've brought into all of our games. Maybe not all the games, but definitely scratching the itch of it, and just do what you want in this very vast spaceship. I obviously I didn't have all the Typhon powers or anything like that, but messing around with the glue cannon was so much fun. I love that. I'm with you, Dylan. It's in my top 10 for sure.
Nice.
It has to stay up there. One of the coolest, my favorite things you can do with that is that you can use it as a conductor, so you can set up a line of glue and then set it and then electrify it, and it'll electrify anything that touched the glue.
Oh, that's genius.
Wow, I didn't even know that. That's amazing.
There's all types of wild shit that you can do with this thing. It is probably one of the most novel weapons in a game I can think of. Definitely has the most options out of any gun I've ever used in a video game.
Yeah.
But also doesn't feel like overpowered
wait,
either.
I almost
Yeah.
overspoke. The gravity gun in Half-Life wins, but it's up
This is the Arkane Retro, Dante.
Sorry, I'll always find my
Half-Life
way.
comes up every episode, I swear.
It's my
all
fault
good.
because I will find a way. To be fair, they worked on a Half-Life game, kind of. So
They did. It's true.
The glue cannon also just going hand in hand with the wrench. I found it so satisfying, especially like early
Yeah.
on. You just like glue up a mimic, and then especially the animation of your character like pulling out the wrench. It's like it's go time. Yeah, just beat the shit.
I love
out
when
of
he
it.
does like the final kill with it too. Sometimes he'll just take the mimic and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just fun to have a weapon that's like you guys talked about, multifaceted, right? It's not just because I thought when you got it's just to freeze an enemy, cool. Like and I liked the actual look of it is really fun. Like it's just one of those things that you'd want to like touch and see what it's like. But just like okay, this is a cool starter weapon, right? Eventually you're probably gonna upgrade it to some rocket launch or something to. But it's like no, that's not what it's needed for. It's needed, and it's kind of like what Dylan you talked about at the beginning of the review where you could really just beat this, like you don't have to unlock everything, do everything, get the entire skill tree to beat this game, and it kind of just feels like
All you need is a glue gun.
yeah,
That's it.
it'd be hard, but all you need to me is that wrench and a glue gun, and you could pull it off. And that's what I liked about it. I'm sure there's somebody out there in the world that maybe has done that before. Like I'm just gonna glue gun it because you could. That's all you buy and stuff, and that's a good thing. It's not with how many things you can do with it, which I didn't even know about that electricity, like you guys. So on a second playthrough, stuff like that, it's just a giving weapon, and you could make electricity hit an opponent. You would think other games might just be, I won't say kind of lazy, but maybe take an easier path. Okay, we're just gonna make some sort of gun that does that, right? Like electricity gun. But it's like no, you can do this. You just gotta get creative enough with it. So I think that's a very interesting thing, and like I said, I didn't even know that, so I'm interested to see what else that thing can do. But it's just it's a cool. It goes with the again kind of with the setting. When I think of this game, I think of the glue gun because I know there's other games that have similar things, but not anything that's been used as effective as this. So
Yeah, definitely.
Like Half-Life, the gravity gun,
there you go. Yeah,
rubbing off on me.
yeah.
I mean, just in general too, I like that all of the weapons have the ammo count like contextualized onto the weapon visually rather than having that be an added element of the UI, which is a very Dead Space thing. But I like that this game does that as well, and like the shotgun like has a little screen on the side and that number ticks. That's also very
that's cool.
satisfying the way that looks. But then like Dante, I think you were saying that you wish there was maybe a bit more like human weapons because there's really just the pistol and the shotgun and I guess the Q beam, but just those two in terms of generic video game weapons, we'll say. But man, the pistol is so satisfying. I love the sound that it makes, being the silenced pistol, like the little pew 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 sound that it makes, and you can truly like trigger finger that thing like crazy. Like I feel like you can get through all 15 shots in like 2 seconds if you just slap super hard, and that always feels good. Just like going as hard as you can, destroy your finger, going ham on that thing.
It's not as OP, but it very much reminded me of the Titanfall 2 pistol. If anyone knows that one, it's and like you said, Dylan, I love just the sound effect of it. I swear, if that had infinite ammo, I would have just taken that to the end game. But I got bigger and badder guns along the way.
This retrospective made me want to play Titanfall 2 so bad again.
Yeah,
It's the movement and how fun it is to just play. Yeah.
It's like the third time it's come up. Yeah, the weapons that are there, even though they are limited, I feel like are very fun. Like definitely like the Q beam is something else. That thing is wild, especially against the Nightmare or like any of the bigger enemies, how it kind of like fills up this second bar on them, and the second you do enough damage to hit that bar, it just kills them. I thought that was just such an entertaining, like weird weapon that it like almost had this like secondary health mechanic that it was adding to enemies.
That's a good like final weapon to unlock, because that is probably for most people gonna be the last one that you find in the wild. I mean, the shotgun, I don't know if there's much to say on it, but it's great. I love it. And the wrench too. I feel like they chose a wrench because like System Shock had a wrench, and this game's very System Shocky. But I love the wrench too. I like that one cool detail is that like when you take out the wrench, or maybe it's just an idle animation, I forget, but Morgan will just kind of like throw it in the air and like flip it and like grab it again. But if you're in space, like in zero gravity, they don't do that. They just like take it out normally. So that's a I feel like so many people wouldn't overlook that detail.
Yeah.
And it would not make any sense, but I like that they thought of that. That was
You would have
cool.
lost that wrench a long time ago.
Oh, yeah.
You get like
Oh, yeah.
8 of them, but like it would have just floated off in his face if he's trying to put his flourish on there.
Mm-hmm. I guess we could talk about some of the Typhon abilities too. So, I mean, one thing with the neuromods, I really like, because I think the skill tree is amazing in this game, because I don't think there's a single skill on there that is uninteresting. Like, there is even ones that are like percentage increases to things, but they even feel exciting, whether that's just like health and stuff like that. Like, I don't feel like there's a lot of fluff in there that a lot of skill trees have. Like, any particular path that it goes down is usually just like 3 pegs maximum, right? And then there's just a lot of different things. So I like that it starts with the 3 human ones, and you can, get those, and then eventually you'll get the Typhon ones on your screen. But then even that is pretty limited until you're really using the psychoscope to scan a bunch of Typhon, learn their abilities. I love that each of the Typhon, you can translate their abilities into stuff that you can use. That's a great thing too. The way they connect 2 ways. So I feel like the skill tree in general is really great, and I love that the neuro mods, to get the new Typhon ones, you have to scan to get them. And there's just like, I think I forgot in the years since I've played this game how many freaking Typhon abilities there is. There are so many powers. I feel like I tried to use every single one. I unlocked everyone, didn't max all them out in this playthrough here, but I tried to use all of them, and I think there's a couple I didn't use in my original playthrough. Like, just summoning a phantom to fight for you is really fun, and you can upgrade that to be a pretty powerful, like, I don't know, it can last a lot longer and be quite strong. And I think you can get them to like be elemental, right? It could be like a fire one or a voltaic one and stuff like that. So that was really fun. Since I couldn't on this playthrough increase my HP at all, one of my things that was saving me was like that ability that just makes it so you like refresh HP. If you like hit, you can like for each hit you can like quickly regen it, but then if you like, hit by something that does like multiple hits, you wouldn't be able to do it that way, I guess, as well. But that was like a lifesaver. Backlash, like just putting that shield up was really really great, especially when you get the you can put like a chipset in that enhances that to make it so like it reflects damage back too in a greater way. So that was like incredibly powerful, and that saved me on many difficult fights at the end game with my limited moveset that I had this time around. Any highlights from you guys for the Typhon abilities? Anything that stand out?
No, I think the Dante named that one earlier. We were talking about the same one of like the yellow kind of vortex one. Just I spammed that one a lot. That was just because it was satisfying too. I liked I liked
Kinetic
just
blast.
the aesthetic of it. Yeah. So no, that was my go-to, because I didn't. There's more now that you've talked about. Like, I didn't do the Phantom one. I had read that, but at that point I was kind of near the end. I was like, I'm not gonna have enough to get to this stuff. So, and that's what I was gonna ask. Is there a point where you could, if you do New Game Plus stuff like that, can you unlock everything, or is there a certain amount that you can only get this point of, you can't get any more Nimrods and stuff?
I mean, I'm guessing in a base game playthrough you could get every single one, right? Just because you can craft neuromods. So if you harvested every piece of material on the Earth, you could probably, well, not on Earth, on Talos 1.
Lots of chargers.
I'm sure you could. And then, I mean, there's so many just hidden neuromods, or eventually you start getting like packs of neuromods at a time, and there's just hidden stuff all over the place. So I feel like, in one playthrough, you could probably get all of them, but I'm sure New Game Plus makes that a lot easier, Dante, considering you get that just like all the quantity of neuromods given directly back to you is really cool. But it sounds like you can redistribute them, right? However you want.
Yeah.
So that's
yeah,
awesome.
You can put it wherever you want to.
Nice. That's
it's
great.
definitely the best way to possibly do it. Like, out of all of the Arkane New Game Pluses, this is the best one, easily. Like, it gives you so much just ability to play your way again without like being stuck to the decisions you made previously.
Right.
Like I said, I mostly was just kind of shotgun class. The shotgun professor, that was the name of my my Morgan on this playthrough. But then by the end, I was just getting a little bit frustrated with the harder enemy types. So I was using the barrier one. I forget what it is, but so nice when you're just kind of getting swarmed and then just like shoots them back, especially for that play style, because I wasn't trying to evade. I was kind of knocking down the door. So that was very useful. I dabbled a little bit in like just the forget what it was called, but like they had the flame one, like the light. It's almost like destruction magic. That's the way my mind goes to it in Elder Scrolls. So a little bit just for more firepower. There was one too where it was kind of like a fire trap. I like using that as well. But other than that, like that's kind of the limitation that I had on this playthrough. So I'm very excited to get creative with the other Typhon abilities, because the more I was using the technoscope, I think that was called, like the view,
the psychoscope.
The psychoscope, thank you. The more I was using that, it's like, oh my god, there's so many things in this game, especially just coming from, I mean, every other Arkane game that we played so far. I feel like it wasn't since like Arcs that I was thinking of just like how, I'm not gonna say niche, but just how many like random abilities I think I wasn't expecting to see in this game. I thought I was gonna be getting like the 8, 9, that I'm used to seeing from like Dishonored 1 or 2 for each character, but I was very, very surprised at just the options that was given to you. And of course, I didn't squeeze all the juice out of that lemon on this playthrough, but that's Arkane games in general. I feel like you're definitely not gonna cross everything on the first go around.
Yep. I mean, we talked about mimic matter a little bit here, which is transforming into things, which is just super fun for sneaking into areas. But there's other, you can just use it as like stealth to sneak past enemies, because they won't be as wary of like a little cup going on the ground as they would you running around. But I also love too that there's one point, I think it's in Psychotronics, when there's like a scanner that people have to walk through, and if there's like any Typhon material, then you'll just get like fried or something like that. And I couldn't get through that. I could not walk through that area, so instead I just like transformed myself into a box, and then as a box I just like moved through that checkpoint without getting scanned. It was a great way to get around like turrets too, because obviously all the turrets in this game fucking hated me in the first 5 minutes because of all the Typhon abilities I had. So it's a great way to sneak past those as well. So once again, just one of those abilities that does so much. So I really enjoyed that. And just, having, like, that's one of the most iconic enemies in the game, if not the most, is just the Mimic. And like that, it feels a bit horror-ish at times, but I think you eventually kind of just see it as a more arcadey thing. But the fact that all of your surroundings, there could be an enemy there at all times, and it kind of makes you look at the surroundings and be like, should there be 2 of those right there? And then sometimes things move, and you're like, oh, that's a Mimic. But then sometimes something's like just rolling, and it's not a Mimic, and then that fucks with you even more, because you're like, what? I swear that was an enemy. No, they're not. So the fact that you can like turn that into an ability that the player can use is, once again, a very arcane-y thing to do, and it's just never gets old. I definitely urge you on your second playthroughs and stuff to just use that ability at all times, because it's crazy. You can mimic almost everything. Well, I guess not super big objects, but like anything that is super, like a cigar you can't do, anything that's like that small, but like pretty much everything else you can, at least for those mid-size items. So it's pretty impressive.
Pretty OP at the like later tiers. Like that actually ended up being one of my main combat like skills as well. Is like just especially in the end game, those like operators that Dahl is sending out are like they're like assholes, and they hit really hard, and you can just mimic those and use the type of or use their artillery against them.
That's so cool.
And it's really
that's just like a Q beam essentially in there.
Yeah, but like it's strong. That and the flamethrower that some of the engineer ones use, also very, very strong. So I would definitely end up using the mimic matter skill, and then also the mind jack skill, and I would like possess the operators as well, because like you could just have like a whole posse behind you. It rocked. Definitely made things a lot easier.
Yeah, and then what's it? Psycho. Oh man, I can't remember what the skill's called. But the one that just like negates enemies from using their Typhon abilities, and you can upgrade to the point where it does like so much damage and turns off their abilities for like 30 seconds or something, which is great to just have a technopath just like going around in circles for like half a minute, and you just
Psycho Shock. That was the name of that one.
That's the one. So that like I love that ability. I think that one and Kinetic Blast, I was just like you just deal so much damage when those things are maxed out. Talking about some of the enemies, I don't think I've never loved the design of the enemies in this game, just like these gooey monsters, and I feel like they all end up kind of looking the same. And then, the Technopath is a bit more like he looks like something out of the Void, right? He's got a bit more slab tech to him. The weavers kind of have like that yellow glow to them. The nightmares are scary and cool looking and stuff. I think they all look a bit samey for me, even if they have like their elemental differences. And I just think of just how great Arkane is with the design of certain things and the character design. Just the art team over there is insane. And I don't know. I don't love the look of the Typhon in general, I guess. But I think there actually is a really great amount of like enemy variety in this game from the ones I mentioned, but then just thinking about like robots or when you're fighting humans and stuff too. Like there's a lot of a good variety there. I never felt like I was getting bored fighting them again. And there's a bit of a rock paper scissorsness to it of figuring out what's strong against enemies or what they're immune to and stuff like that, and working within that. But I think each one of them, there's so many different ways you can damage each enemy effectively that I never feel like it's just, okay, I'm only going to use this shotgun for this enemy. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. So whether they have ammo or the psi points or the psi reloads and stuff like that, you can always kind of get out of a sticky situation.
They definitely they're super interesting and cool looking when you first see them. Like the first mimic you see or the first phantom you see, but then it does start to just look like varieties of different the darkness. You guys familiar with the Darkness, the comic book series?
I am, yes.
Yeah. So I figured I'm in the right company for this. They just kind of look like different varieties of that to me after a while. Like it doesn't really seem like they're necessarily changing up what these enemies look like outside of now he's electrified and now he's on fire.
Yeah.
They tend to kind of just start to get a little tired after a bit. But that first interaction with these guys, I think, is really sick, and they do seem different enough, but they they overstay their welcome maybe a little bit.
Not to get us off topic, just because I'll never be able to ask this question again. Did you ever play the Darkness video game back in the day? Okay.
I've heard the game. I didn't realize it was based on a comic book.
Yeah, me too.
There's two of them.
When you said the Darkness, I was nodding, and then you said comic book series. I'm like, oh, okay, no.
No, it's the same one. It's the same one.
That's crazy.
Same one.
Yeah, no, in middle school.
So
I believe in a thing called. Yeah, should have been. What happened to him? They were one of the biggest songs of all time. Just gone. But yeah, no, Darkness was in middle school. It was coming out. I remember it was one of the first Marvel DC stuff that other people were reading. Oh, you gotta read this. It's okay. Yeah. So no, that's a good description. They almost remind me for what Kirkland would also probably appreciate, and even Dylan too, as he's seen it. It's kind of like Venom, and then it's well, here's the red Venom, here's the yellow Venom, and it's like they're not changing the color. It's just there's the electricity around them. So I think I was kind of 50-50 where I liked that big floating one. I can't remember what that name is. They're like a round ball. They almost look like a puffer fish.
Telepath or
Weaver, Technopath.
Yeah, maybe one of those. Yeah, it was the big ones. That was just they were always in a door and stuff. So I think I found them good. It's just not that. I think when I think of the enemies, I'm always just going to think of the mimics and the phantoms, and the rest are going to kind of blend together to me. Those are the two that really stood out. The mimics, just because I feel like that was a lot of marketing and lead up, and I love the idea of the playfulness of it could be anything. And the phantom, just the first time you come to it, I remember just getting destroyed and then running away for quite a while. So those are the two I'll think of. The other ones are fun variations, but it is a little samey, and that's where if we ever got a Prey 2, I'd love to have a bit more variety on the types and stuff. So I think it was serviceable for this, but that's not the thing I'll be remembering from this game. And I think you made some good points, Dylan. It's not that they're boring in a fighting way. It's not that they look different and they all die the same way. It's just that's the aesthetic could have been maybe a little bit different, but not a big deal.
Yeah, I agree a lot with you guys. I think the initial viewing was also because I hadn't experienced any of the enemy types from just seeing gameplay other than just on the cover. But again, it's just shadows. I didn't really discern that to be enemy types or anything like that. But yeah, mimics again. Bringing up Half-Life, definitely thought of the face crawlers on there or whatever the hell those things are called. Yeah, there you go. So this is just kind of a symbiote version of it with the with the dark goo. Phantoms I thought was a really, really cool look for sure. I feel like the most memorable other than those types would be the Technopath, just because like you said, Dylan, just thinking of the void type creature, I was just blown away, and it's almost like a Nope situation. I couldn't stay away from it. I was this thing is just so beautiful yet terrifying all at the same time.
When it has 4 or 5 turrets and operators surrounding it and just this orb, it's pretty terrifying.
Absolutely. With the Nightmare, pretty let down actually. I feel like the Nightmare is just like a big phantom. I feel like, I don't know, with the imposing threat that it has, I feel like there was a lot of times I was just running away from it, and every time I did see it, it was just like, okay, that's just a big boss with like a big health bar, not so much like this is the scariest thing I've ever seen, I'm trying to run away from it sort of vibes. I was just a coward, I didn't want to fight it. But yeah, I think early on I was a little bit worried that I was only going to be seeing mimics and phantoms, so it kind of was nice to see some different just enemy types later on, like the Weaver. That was a nice change of pace. So I definitely agree that they could have gone deeper, but I think it also just fits that they have this like hive mind type threat that they all just kind of look the same, and it is just all the same. So that kind of worked for me, but definitely would, like, if we got Prey 2, I wouldn't want to just see the same roster. I'd want to see a lot new enemy types.
Some evolved ones. Yeah, I think the Nightmare, at least on this playthrough for sure, where my weapons, I could not repair them. So it's like I do not want to invest the resources to try and fight this thing for the reward. And so the predominant strategy was just to sit in a corner for 3 minutes and wait the timer out. So I think that's a bit of a miss too on the gameplay side of it. I think the first couple times we fight them, it's pretty memorable, but then it like kind of overstays its welcome, and I end up liking to fight the enemies that go down a bit quicker and don't just immediately one-shot me a bit more. None of us mentioned the Poltergeist, but that's actually one of my favorites too, because I think that's like definitely the scariest enemy in the game, because it always catches you by surprise of like you're just walking, you'll hear some demented music, things are a bit weird, and then you just fly into the air if they hit you with their like lift ability.
My god, I hate those guys so much. Jeez.
Is it good hate because they're scary good, or is it bad hate because they're annoying?
No, it's good. It's challenge. It's not an actual game. It's just that when you bumped into him, it'd be the most inopportune times. I feel like I always bumped into him when it's just I have to really get this thing over here. And I the very first time, it's just, I'm sure like everybody didn't know, like they're just so strong and they can kill you so fast. Like they just pick you up twice and it's over. And I thought, because I got hit, I'm like, oh, it's fine. Like I looked at them as not like a massive threat. I looked at them more as like an annoyance that could mess you up. But really, no, it was annoyance and a death. So no, it was still challenging, but I hated any time bumping into them. Like, man, I just got to, and I was just running. I would just full speed run away. I wasn't fighting or trying to fight those things. Run, grab the stuff I could, grab the log I have to, and get the hell out of there. So, and plus, a lot of times when I kept bumping them was at the beginning when I was fully doing the human skill tree stuff. So I feel like if I had some of those more, power sets to combat them, it would have been better. But I didn't at that point. And later on in the game, I don't think I really bumped into them too much when I was getting like the telekinesis and stuff like that. Right. So on a playthrough, I'll be ready to mess them up. And now I know what's happening. But oh yeah, those things were brutal.
Yeah,
I could never see a cystoid again in my life and be happy. Though.
Yeah, those ones.
Those fucking things, just
especially in space,
especially in the guts when you're like trying to just like move from point A to point B in the guts, and it's just these. I'm like, god damn it, I didn't kill all the nests on my first my first pass through here. So like, I've got these just like pellets just blowing up next to me every 5 seconds. Those are the only enemies in the entire game that I was like, okay, this is getting kind of tedious at this point. Just leave me alone. I'm trying to fly through this area, and you're in this like little nook, and I will never find the nest here, and I'm just going to brute force it and like just heal my way through this space, because like I just never ended up dealing with them either. I would just like face tank it.
Yeah. Yeah, and the radiation too is always like a scary thing, which that was actually not in the game when it first launched. Was like those more survival elements of like you can like break your bones and like you get like internal bleeding and stuff like that, which you can toggle on or off at the start of the game. But that was something that like with the Mooncrash DLC, it added more of those survival mechanics, and then they like put that in the base game as well, so you could interact with that stuff too. But the radiation. I think the radiation would have been in the base game, but some of the things like that got added. Let's see what else. Here's one very quick note that I thought was interesting. Something I kind of forgot about, but the weapon wheel. This game has like what feels like a classic weapon wheel at first when you open it up, and it's a circle. But I love that it kind of rotates infinitely, and eventually you do need that if you have so many Typhon abilities that you'll have so much stuff on there. But I thought that was a really cool, a novel solution that like more games need to steal that. Like I remember in Horizon Forbidden West last year, like there's just not enough room on that skill tree for everything, and I wanted to put more things on, but it's so limited. And it's like, man, make that thing rotate like this one infinitely. That's such a great solution. I'm quite surprised in retrospect that I've never seen another game steal that, because it seems, I mean, maybe it's hard to do for something on like a programming side, but definitely worth it.
I don't know a single person who likes that game.
Horizon,
yeah.
Travis's
reaction, I was like, that's been every single person I know's reaction to that game. That is so funny.
In person, I feel like you look online, you see Christoph, it's like it's one of the greatest things ever. You know, the DLC just dropped. But no, specifically, like I don't hate the game, but the wheel, yeah, that's annoying. I don't like every 30 minutes having to pause and put in, okay, I'll do this one now, especially in the middle of battle. Like you want to feel, if you're in a high octane situation like this, and I will agree, I like the wheel, you want to switch, go, and be back in the game. You don't want to have to pause and go there. What should would I use this later? No, it's just like an instantaneous feel. It makes it almost feel more realistic that way. Of, I guess I know someone's gonna be like, well, you're fighting dinosaurs that are robots. I know, but I mean, like, you're trying to be immersed in the world when you have to pause and do all the switches. Where this is like, this would feel like, okay, it's just a wheel, but if you're collecting all these things, so no, I agree, people should steal, because I don't want to have to pause and swap and switch.
Sorry for the tangent. That got a sincere chuckle out of me, though. Like, that game just is being disrespected.
We are not the podcast to go to if you want. Well, actually, we like the original Horizons. Go back to our original.
I still like the fur. I still like the fur. I say it's like a 7 out of 10. I think it's just our sense of disappointment. That's always it, you know. So.
I love that the opening, like when you boot up this game and it has the Arkane Studios logo, and that weird shape that they have in their logo is a mimic that turns out and then like runs across the screen. Especially like, you know, at the tail end of this Arkane retrospective, and we're praising the studio so much, to have like this funny little thing happen in their logo is something that always gets me whenever I see it.
Definitely a nice little Easter egg there.
A couple other kind of character things I wanted to mention. So voice acting wise, we've talked about this because like Dishonored has just like an insane list of voice actors in there. But of course, Benedict Wong being Alex Yu, he does a great job, and he's the most like prominent voice performance in the game. He's talking to you so much. I did not realize this, even playing through the game again, that Walton Goggins is the voice of Aaron Ingram, who's like the volunteer that you can. I mean, I probably didn't notice in this playthrough because I killed him. I did not save him out of that thing. But he's, we didn't mention him, but he's one of those people too that he's not one of those 4 operators at the end, but he's tied to. I think Danielle shows like part of that story, and whether or not you saved him or whatnot is one of the things you're judged for at the end of the game. But yeah, totally did not catch that was Walton Goggins, and I almost would have wished he had more. He had been given a bigger character to play in the game, perhaps.
I was disappointed because I had pulled it up before I started playing just to see, because I heard Benedict Wong's voice, but wanted to confirm because like, okay, I'm pretty sure it's him, but I want to confirm. And then I saw Goggins. I'm a big Goggins fan. I was like, oh, I can't wait, and then he just pops up for a little bit, so that was disappointing. But yeah, it was fun to have him in there. Like I said, some good voice talent in there. So
yeah, definitely. I wanted, like, I don't know if there's too many quests I feel like I need to break down, but one that I think is really great is when you first get to crew quarters, and your objective there is to get enough audio, I guess, tapes, recordings, whatever it is, from Danielle to like build a recreation of her voice so you can get through one of these doors that's locked up by like a voice line that she has. And I think just playing through it this time, and with especially the limited build that I had, and just like figuring out all the different ways, like all the different places you can find her voice. Because I think even in one of the rooms very early on, there's like an audio log on the ground that you can just repair if you have repair skill, and that'll just like give you a percentage of it. And I'm like, oh, interesting. I don't have that, and I know the game's not going to make me get repair skill to complete this quest. So the fact that there's just so many different ways that you can get pieces of audio dialogue ripped out of that character from all over the station, I thought was really cool. So that was just definitely a highlight quest for me because of the open nature of it. Even if maybe everyone's going to get 80% of the same stuff, but then there's like different ways based on your build that you're going to be rewarded to do this quest. So that was cool.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
Yeah, the D&D quest is still really
Yes.
Oh,
good
yeah.
because you can
Stab fellow.
yeah, right. I was going to say we definitely both lean towards that, both reaching for that name. But just the fact that like I think it's really cool that like the game knows if you cheat and you get a different like reward depending on whether or not you cheated during the
Really?
quest line. Yeah. So
What do you
get
get?
this, like super OP armor hold on, let me actually like pull the quest up because there's two different ones, and the one that you get if you cheat is like reduces all of your stats. It's like it's like a debuff on every single thing that like it could possibly be. Hold on, I'll
you
pull
gotta
it
break
up.
this down. I don't know what
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about actually. Off the top of my head.
Here, I'll pull it up real fast.
While you're Kirkland, go ahead. You also like this element.
Yeah, I was just gonna say like that whole area too of just like coming across like the crew quarters, the living quarters, and then just they have like their I think it was Fatal Fantasy was like their D&D having their character cards. Fatal Fortress, thank you. Man, that was just making me smile of like just seeing the character cards and then like just getting like the little backstory on like their characters or whatnot, and then actually finding like the table where they play and everything is like man, like I would love to have a D&D setup like this. Like this is just gold standard, but again, it just brought so much like humanity I think to these like characters that up until this point like I didn't really meet. Like they were just dead bodies essentially, but just so much like heart around these characters, and then having like from their campaign this character Captain Stabfellow, and then like there actually be like a quest that comes from that. I was like smiling ear to ear like that entire sequence. It was like, man, this is the best. And that was a side quest in there, you know, speaking to just like what they excel at. In that moment, it was like one of the best quests I've done just because of like how happy I was in that moment.
Finding all their little character pages, and they're like
Yeah.
they've, like drawn out their characters, so you can
Totally,
see like
yeah.
their like versions of themselves in D&D. It's super cool. So there's two rewards for this. There's one if you do it properly, and one if you like because you have to find a digit in each part of like the ship.
Right.
And if you're supposed to go in a particular order, and the order is randomized though in each playthrough. So if you just brute force the numbers, it's like, okay, he's tried this like 6 times, he's cheating. And
That's so funny that it'll still give
you either get the Adventurer's Toolkit, which increases your recycler yield, you get increased crit, you get
Is it like a
longer
chip set?
flashlight. Yeah, it's a chip.
Okay.
And you get increased movement speed while crouched. Or you get the Game Master's Ire, which reduces your recycler yield, your flashlight battery is reduced, and your movement speed while crouched is reduced. So it's like
That's so
straight
great.
debuff across the board.
Sorry, is that also a chipset though?
Yeah. So
So
you
you
have
would
to
just-
equip it. You'd have to
Okay.
equip it to get the debuff. So it is like, hey, I
It's like
cheated
a
on this
challenge
and
run
now-
kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Just like, I don't know, really quirky, fun way to like punish you for
Yeah.
trying to brute force it. Obviously, Arkane of all people would definitely do this.
Yeah, I mean, and that is, classic Arkane thing to randomize the codes between playthroughs. That's always a cool detail, which, Travis, you got to look out for that. If you're playing through the game again, all the codes are, or at least most of them are randomized. Like, even when you see a hint on a wall written out on, like, with, like, I don't know, on a whiteboard or something, those codes are changed in between playthroughs, so...
I like that a lot. That's fascinating. It sucks for people that look for playthroughs because I almost at one point the turret because I couldn't find a turret and I was like, I could just do the codes. I'm like, no, I'll find the turret, and I figured out what I was missing. But yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, I'm sure for like people who write walkthroughs as well, they're like, fuck, I love in most games I can just give you the code, but instead in this I have to say you have to go to this place, look at this wall, interpret this, Yeah, so Fatal Fortress, we brought this up in the Arx Fatalis episode because of course that's like Arx Fatalis is Latin for Fatal Fortress, and that's like a nice reference that this game has back to the studio's first title. And once again, in that episode we talked about how Rafael Colantonio kind of founded Arkane, and this was his last title with the studio. Now he's off doing his other thing, and so I love that there's kind of like this full circle connection between the games. So I took a picture of like the Game Master's tome, and I wanted to read through this because the way this just like directly references Arx Fatalis is great. So Fatal Fortress is a world deprived of sunlight. As Game Master, you will guide a troop of stalwart adventurers through glittering caves crawling with rat men into battles against horrors that have slept for centuries and deep into the secret heart of the Fatal Fortress itself. Unlike other games, Fatal Fortress has no set character classes, instead encouraging players to play through their own way by mixing and matching abilities as they are faced with new challenges. The game also features a dramatic magic system where players create their own spells by drawing and combining runes. Each player will need a character record sheet, a miniature to represent their character on the map, and a full set of dice. So that more D&D stuff. But like the Ratmen reference, the spell system, like they're just directly referencing what Arx Fatalis is, and I just love that, especially once again as Rafael Cantolio's first and last game with the studio. That's just, I don't know, great little details. It just warms my heart to see that.
The skill sheet even has the same icons that you select in Arx.
Oh, I missed
really?
that. That's
I didn't
cool.
notice that.
The sneaking guy and the gear and the eye, like the
That's
hand,
so cool.
like it's all exactly the same. They're so good. You could tell me all fun facts about Arkane for the rest of my life, and I will
here's
smile.
Another fun fact that I'm not even surprised by this. I was like looking around the whole game for this. We talked about how in both Arx Fatalis and Dishonored they like hide something under a pillow, and that's like a quest item at some point in this game. Also does that too, of course. It makes sense. There's a lot of pillows and beds in this game, but I like that. For some reason, 3 of Arkane's titles have items hidden under pillows. That's just a thing that they do over and over again. I'm sure Redfall will be the same way, so we'll talk about that when that comes out.
We'll have to be on the hunt.
I want to talk about Mooncrash at some point. I know that, well, Dante, have you played Mooncrash at all either?
Failed you as well.
Okay, so I think that'll be me just briefly talking about it. Is there anything on the main game that you guys wanted to talk about still?
Quickly shout out the operators. I love the design. Just like giant floating PCs. That's the way that I saw them. And especially like just January as a character. It's funny, Travis, you're just talking about like the voice of the different characters. Can't remember what you specifically said. Just like
let's talk about the male.
Oh yeah. There you go. It wasn't until like, I don't want to say halfway through the game, but like couple hours in when I realized like, oh, this is actually Morgan's voice. it just did not hit me initially. Probably because, I don't know, I wasn't hearing much of his voice till you're actually like talking to yourself through the looking glass, which that was really cool tech too, just like getting those little video sequences or flashbacks in there. But yeah, just I love the character of January, and I think the game did such a great job at having this like, in my eyes, I thought he was a trustworthy companion. I feel like everything that he was saying made sense for where Morgan was at, and like it really seemed like Morgan set this character off to just guide me, and like that was like my one true beacon with like how much chaos or other people just saying things, whether it was Alex just giving his speech. I feel like I was really loyal to January, but the game did such a good job at just making me not want to trust like anyone by the end of the game that like I was really second guessing January at one point, and I don't even think it's at any fault for the character of January. It was just like because the game was like pushing me in this uneasy direction. I felt like Morgan. I felt like I was losing my sanity. So I just loved how January was with you from, not directly with you, but he's with you for a good chunk of the game, at least like in his audio. I loved him. I also just loved just the different operators that we interact with, which there is a lot. I like how they just repair you every once in a while. That's a nice little again, like lore. Like it seemed immersive every time that I was interacting with an operator like that, as opposed to just picking up like a repair thing or something for my suit. Like it all fit with the world. And yeah, but I just want to shout out the operators because I love their design. It seemed obnoxious at first, just this like giant floating, like I said, PC tower, but I really like them for sure.
So a little nice fun piece of information is the operators, specifically the medical operators, is SpongeBob.
That's so random.
It's the same voice actor that does.
Really?
That's amazing.
Is that the only voice they do for the game? Is just that?
I think he's just medical operator. That's all he's
Wow.
That's all he's credited as. But yeah, it's
like,
Tom Kenny, who is like a legend.
I would understand if they had like a bigger role and it's like, oh, also you want to do like this like robot. It's like, yeah, sure, but the fact that it's like that's just what it is, just this robot, that's pretty fascinating.
I like that the medical robots, like no matter how typhoned up I was, they would always heal me. I like that they
Yes.
at some point for like
Doesn't
game balance
discriminate.
wise, they're like, okay, not every robot's gonna hate you, just the turrets and other certain operators. But I love that like, operator approach, that like that little
Yeah.
line that they drop all the time when they're moving around. And I love that like when you would spawn one, they just like roam that area and like kind of make it their
Yeah.
home. They're like tidying up and stuff like.
Operator
so good.
requested.
Yes. Yeah. I love all that stuff.
I also just wanted to shout out the coral. I found that to just be a very
Beautiful.
mysterious thing initially, and then obviously you just get really used to seeing it around, and then by the end, it's just absolutely flooded everywhere, and I don't know, it just has this beauty yet like eeriness to it, and I think that's something that they really hit home as well. Because it's not like it's harming you or anything like when you are like interacting with it the first time or seeing it, and you don't even really know what it is. So I just liked its inclusion, and obviously as the game ramps up, it starts to just be absolutely everywhere.
It can be a boon too. Like you can have a chip that makes it so when you're passing through it, it increases your Typhon energy. So like,
Oh shit, that's
refills
awesome.
your mana essentially is going through it. So
Yeah,
was
I think
pretty
there's
cool.
also a way to like, I don't know where you do this, but you can like put psi energy into the water system throughout the station so that you can, whenever you like drink out of a fountain or a sink, it like gives you psi energy back. So that's a
Wow.
side
Didn't
quest
find
that I
that.
didn't know you could do, but like on my next playthrough, I'm gonna like, as soon as I possibly can do that side quest, I'm gonna go do that because that's just a really cool
Hell
thing
yeah.
that you can do. Go ahead, Travis. What's up?
The only thing I was gonna say, we talked about it a little bit, but I love anytime you can go outside in space. I didn't know that was gonna
Yeah.
be a thing in this game. I love the aspect. I love
Yeah.
the mechanics of it. I love that to me it feels smooth but clunky at the same time, but clunky on like a purposeful way because you're in space with no gravity and stuff like that. So anytime I had to travel airlock or there's a mission I had to go outside, I was very excited. I because that's not something that I feel like again too in other games when you go outside you have in space you have like some cool suit that you just move around and it's just very easy, and the gimmick is, oh, like look at space, so that's very cool, or you can be on a spaceship. But I loved the kind of awkwardness, the realistic awkwardness of it. Again, lots of high tech, sci-fi stuff going on, but kind of based in reality. So I had a fun time with the thrusters and everything. There's that one part in the game where you have to like go through the terminal, and it's like a bunch of them, and you can just like hit that speed, and you're just going as fast as possible. Then you hit a door, and so yeah, that was another highlight for me. Was anytime I got to go in space.
Yeah, I like the kind of blown out areas where it's like an interior location.
Yeah,
that's
that's what I was talking about, yeah.
Yeah. That's always fun. Okay, let's take our next break, and then we'll be right back. Okay, so Prey Mooncrash was a DLC that came out about a year after this game came out originally. And it's very underloved even on this very retrospective here, because this thing is really great, and I really encourage anyone to check it out. It's interesting because Deathloop has not necessarily like a roguelike structure to it, but it's got an air of that, right, in terms of replaying through locations over and over again, and that's definitely what Mooncrash is all about, where it is this kind of roguelike mode where you are on the moon base and you're going through these different areas, and essentially your goal is, and you unlock stuff as you're going through it, so it takes a bit for you to get to this point. But essentially the idea is that you have these 5 different characters that I mentioned. Each one of them is kind of specialized in different ways, and they all have like their individual story and how they knew each other and all this fun lore stuff that's really enjoyable. And there are 5 like escape methods on this moon base. Like one of them would be just like an escape pod. One of them would be like getting into a ship. There's 5 different ones. I can't remember what they all are because I did not replay it in preparation for this retrospective. I played it back in 2018. But essentially what you need to do to get to win, to get in a successful run is to get each of these characters to one of these escape pods like in that same run. So like let's say I use the engineer and I use the shuttle, the escape pod shuttle to get out of there, then that's now removed from one of these other characters, and I have to find a different entrance to get out of. And the deeper you go through these loops, the more like chaos is happening. The station's like breaking down, more things aren't working, whether that's the power that goes out or more enemy types, or like less oxygen, like things like that. Definitely more of a kind of survival element to it in a way too, which obviously those mechanics they brought into the main game as well, but that's where it was introduced. It's really fun. It's really enjoyable. It's a great kind of puzzle mixed with just like, here, play with all these tools that you mastered by playing through the main game. There's new stuff too. Like there's a cool. It's almost like a little It's like a little lightsaber dagger almost, called the Psycho Cutter. It's a cool little like purple knife that's really sweet. A new enemy type is like this Typhon that like burrows into the like surface of the moon and like pops out and like throws moon rocks at you and things like that. So it's really great. The location that you're playing through, a lot of different, once again, variety and types of areas and whatnot. So definitely recommend everyone go play that. It's worth the $20 or however much it costs. One thing that I find really bizarre though is originally I had this game on PS4. That's where I got it. You have my copy up there behind me. And then for this playthrough, I played through the game on Xbox Series X just because it's on Game Pass there, and I wanted to play it on the newer console and whatnot. I got to say, it crashed like 5 or 6 times.
Crashed.
Yeah, not Mooncrash, like just the game in general. But I do appreciate that pun. And that was like wild to me that it's like after all these years, it's still been issues on like the Game Pass version, which is like you probably want this version to run pretty well. So a very quick side tangent to say that for whatever reason, this game is of course on PC Game Pass, but Mooncrash you cannot purchase through the Xbox store on PC. You can do it on Xbox, but not on PC. So I was like, I downloaded this on my PC to see if it would run. Back in the day, I didn't think it would. That's why I got it on PS4. It worked, but then you can't get Mooncrash specifically. So I was like, what is going on here? This is very bizarre. So you'd have to like love the game on Xbox Game Pass PC, go over to Steam, buy the whole game again, then buy Mooncrash because you can't run Mooncrash without the base game. So just a weird thing that I don't know why they never figured that out completely. I guess this game came out before Xbox acquired them, and maybe there's something weird there with exclusivity. I don't know, but they should get that figured out because I think they should put Mooncrash just like throw it on Game Pass, make that into a Game Pass feature. That would be a good thing to do at this
That's
point.
what I was hoping for. Yeah.
Dear Mr. Spencer, how dare you disrespect Prey?
I know, right?
I watched a little video on Mooncrash just to tickle my fancy when I was eating one day and just wanted to get the whole gist of it. And I love the way that it's like story element, like explained how it's like a rival company to oh my gosh, what are they even called now? TriStar? TransStar?
TransStar.
Yeah. I love how it's just like a rival company that's like trying to do something similar, and they have just like, it's essentially simulations, which is why you're able to have this like roguelike, like constantly trying to do it again. Like just that like explanation, like again, they didn't have to do that. They could have just started the game, you're selecting your class, but it's been a couple times in this retro, probably more than a couple actually, that I've shouted out just the attention to detail that Arkane goes to. And I love all that stuff. I was eating that up, but definitely want to try it one day because it looked really, really fun. And I think that roguelike setting just fits so well. And especially just because I didn't play a lot of Typhon-centric playstyle on this one. Play the character. I'm assuming you have to unlock the characters, though, to
you
get
start
them all.
You start with one, and then I forget what the unlock... I mean, you get like a credits or some currency, and then you use that to buy things on subsequent runs, and then I think you maybe use that to unlock characters. I forget the specifics of some of that stuff, but yeah, it definitely drip feeds it, and I feel like the first character is kind of like not a jack of all trades, but like they get maybe a couple Typhon abilities. You can use certain weapons, and like they could just get like a little bit of a sampler platter of it, and then the other characters are more specialized. That's probably how it works.
Right on.
Mm-hmm. So it's worth mentioning too, for the sake of being thorough, that there was also another DLC for this game that came out with Mooncrash, which I had never played, and it still exists, so we could all go play it if we want, but it's called Typhon Hunt, and it's essentially a ripoff of Gary's Mod Prop Hunt, in which there is an asynchronous situation where someone's playing a human, and they're trying to find all the mimics, and then the players can, mimic themselves as different objects, and you're trying to hide in, I guess, sections of the space station. It has like just horrid reviews, and it seems like maybe what they did is like to get the multiplayer to work without the game bugging out, because I can imagine that being a really difficult thing in terms of, think about like multiplayer and collision between like small, weird, janky objects and other players. Like it sounds like a mess. And so I feel like to make it work, they stripped out tons of like Prey's like game feel and stuff. Like they just made it like a bare bones version to like remove some of the potential jank, I guess. So I think that's probably why it was not very successful. But it's interesting because we talked about how for Dark Messiah, like the multiplayer, of course, was not made by Arkane, but it feels different than what the base game feels like, and I feel like this is kind of the same thing there. So I don't know if it's a great mode necessarily. Mooncrash is the DLC you want, and then I think they also added like VR support at some point. So this game would be pretty cool in VR. Dante, do you have any interest in doing that as a VR owner?
If it was like alive, right? If there was like people to play it with, like I guess.
Well, I mean, because I think the VR
together.
Is the VR just for that mode? Is it not for the?
I think it's just for that mode.
Oh fuck! Well, that sucks. Okay.
You're just like a cup looking around.
If I could play Prey in VR, I would have played this entire playthrough in VR.
Yeah, that would have been cool. Okay, I thought you could, but yeah, that's a bit.
If I'm
those
wrong,
poltergeists.
then I will be very happy to be wrong. But like, I did not see any hint of VR. Abilities.
Good to know. Good to know.
Game.
Let's close this out then with just like we'll say a brief discussion on just the future of Prey. The word Prey 2 has been dropped a couple times here, and we've talked about maybe some things we'd like to see if they did this again. I don't know if they will. Of course, the name of Prey is a weird case where Arkane has even outwardly said this. So they did not want this to be Prey. This was not what the game was intended to be called, but it was Bethesda, the publisher, who was like, yeah, we got to use the Prey IP or else we're going to lose it. So we're going to make this game called Prey. But like the name it's not a good name. It's not very memorable. It doesn't really elicit what this game is. And now it's even almost kind of been in the search engine, been kicked out by the Prey movie.
100%.
So
yeah. When I went to go look at like critic reviews and how it did sales wise, when I just searched Prey, I always had to go Prey the video game
in there.
Yeah, and even before that, there's another Prey video game that pops up too. So it's just like SEO purposes, not the best.
Talk about that.
Yeah,
we not even talk about the fact that this
I think we
like
talked about it in like our like the brief history. But yeah, Dante, as someone who's played the actual Prey, I mean, do you want to touch on that a little bit?
It is just a wholly different thing. Like at the end of the day, it feels
0%
like a complete
in common.
Reimagining. Like the closest thing I could think of that would like relate those two is like, this doesn't even feel related, but like there is like a heavy sci-fi like thing going on in the original Prey. Like it is a lot about like moving through portals and interacting with like another like alien race, and you're like constantly moving through these portals to go back and forth between Earth and this like these aliens, but like they're not Typhon, you know what I mean? Like it is a sick game for the original Xbox. Or Xbox 360, I think original Xbox.
I think it was an original. It feels like it's pretty old, like 2005 kind of game.
But like I remembered really enjoying it when I played it, but gosh, I was like 12 maybe.
I should really go back and check it out. I've heard good things about it too.
Yeah, I really do think it is they're similar in IP alone. Oh no, it was 360. It was 360. Okay. It just feels it's been a long time, but like reviewed super well. Like it was very much like a Quake like, or like a modern, like it was better than Doom, I think.
Oh my god.
It came out around the same
time.
Big.
That's big praise right there.
I don't know. Doom 3 people didn't really like that game.
Okay. Fair enough.
Flashlight shenanigans. But yeah, very very cool like portal mechanics in that game, and the shooting was super fun. But it was like, if you look at pictures of it, it looks a lot like a Doom game. It looks like it was made by id, for sure.
Yeah. So obviously it's weird that this is thrown on there. So for people who are fans of that game, they were not happy with this game because it's not a sequel to that or a reimagine. It's nothing to do with that. It's just like publisher meddling. So I don't think that was to help the game. I don't know if it would have sold much better if it had a different name, maybe, but I don't know if it would have a greatly different place in history. I think what I've heard from like fans and like from data mining, so I don't think this has ever actually been confirmed, is that Psycho Shock was maybe one of the names, or like maybe
that's not a good name. That's not a good name either.
I'll disagree. I think it's pretty good because I think it elicits the System Shock and the Bioshockness of it, so it puts it in that realm of things, which this game is very much like. If you like System Shock, you will. Prey is like, you know, a remake essentially of System Shock in a way. Then it puts you in that place of Bioshock, and then the psycho element of it is obviously very like relevant to the title. So I think that something like that would be better than Prey, because that at least tells you what the game is and maybe would set it up for that way. But I still think that there is. What's that, Dante?
I don't think they could get away with it. Like, that would be such like an IP steal almost. Because
doesn't Bioshock do that? And no one cares about that, right? Bioshock is just like ripping off System Shock with the naming convention, and no one.
That's true.
Yeah. So I don't like. I think this would be. I think that'd be fine. I think they get away with it, whether or not it's a good name or not. But like, I don't know if that's. I don't know if we need to get into full discussion on what the title of this thing should have been. But yeah. So I think, you know, with that stuff aside, part of me thinks with like, once again, with Rafael Colantonio being such a big part of Arkane in general, and the, you know, creative director of this game, the fact that he's not there is actually pretty telling to me that like I don't feel like they would want to go back to it in a way, in the same way that like I don't know if they would do Arx Fatalis like for many reasons, but one just being that he created that game and he is no longer there, and a lot of the people that started with Arkane left with him, so I feel like a lot of the people that made this wouldn't want to do it either. So I don't know. I feel like we've already seen Arkane Austin, the studio that made this, is making Redfall now. So they've already, at least they're not following up with their next title. Is it big enough that they're going to revisit next time and people to be hyped for it? Obviously we would be, but with the general populace and stuff like that. So I would love to see it. I just don't think it'll happen. I think more likely would be like Xbox, and now Bethesda, now Xbox would be like, yeah, we need to release a Prey game again to keep that IP, so we're gonna get some other random game and call it Prey, or Prey, you know, with a subtitle or something like that, so we can, you know, hold on to this IP for whatever reason. I don't know why they need to do that anymore, but I don't know. I think there could, like, if we were to talk about a direct sequel to this, I think going to Earth would make sense, going back to a Typhon infected Earth and recovering it, saving it. I think that would make more sense, but I don't know if that would take away from like the cool space elements of this game. But I don't really know how you revisit the specific story told here, unless it's like a soft reboot in a way where it's just like, okay, here's a new space station, here's some of the Prey mechanics, here's some new mechanics, and like a new unrelated story, and almost just like a spiritual sequel. I think that would maybe be the best way to do it, because I don't know if I want the game where you go back to Earth at the conclusion of this.
I agree. I think something that's so special about, like, I've talked a lot about just like the beauty of the ship, but also just like the claustrophobic nature of it. It's the same thing that makes Alien so amazing, is that you're stuck in this tin can out there. Like, there's nowhere for you to go. And I think this game does a really good job of that. Even though you do leave it, you kind of float around, but you don't go too far from it. So although like I think I'm at least interested enough to see where they go with like the whole Typhon like ending of this. It isn't showing me enough to really think that going to Earth is the best place to go. Like I just feel like the playground, like where you're actually playing the game, just wouldn't really be satisfying. The only way I could really see it being done is if they do something funny enough, similarly how Bioshock 2 did it, how you're still in like the same location. So here you'd be on Typhon, but you'd be playing as a different character. Now in that one you're playing as a Big Daddy, so I don't think you'd be playing as, you know, the technopath or or anything like that. But just like a different character that's interacting with the same playground that Morgan did, but just through a different lens. I think that could be really interesting. But I don't know. I think that could only really go as far as to be something like Death of the Outsider, where it's like a half step of a next game, not like a full-on sequel. Maybe if there was another character that was really integral to the plot, that you could play the game through their eyes, but I don't think Alex was doing much, you know, like I don't think there's other characters that you could pull to do that from, because
no one feels like they have enough room for sequel territory in terms of just character progression.
Yeah, exactly. So although I do like this enough to want to play another one, I think, to your point, Dylan, I agree. I don't think it's actually going to happen. Even just like story purpose, like I just don't see it fitting, as opposed to the real world stuff that you brought up with the like the original what was his name? I'm gonna butcher it if I try it. Ralph.
Raphael.
Raphael. I'm calling him Ralph. Nickname over here.
No, I like it better as a one done. That's why another reason why I'm not a fan of the the simulation ending, because I like the idea of you pick your ending that's in the story and there you go. Going to Earth to me sounds very uninteresting because what it's just going to be. I guess you go to landmarks and it's infected by something, but I feel like we've seen that done so much, and I think the novelty of this game is being stuck in this base. Yes, they add a lot to it. There's many levels to it, but there is still a scope of the beginning and the end. Where if you land on Earth, what country to go to, how big do you get it? So I feel like you lose what would make it Prey. So I think it's good as a one and done or something adjacent of another adventure in this world that doesn't do with these characters. The same way Mooncrash was about, hey, the competition, something like that in the vein of a new space shuttle or a new time era, even whether it's further or in the past. But yeah, Earth or just picking up with the, and I guess I said I'm not too interested in even picking up with the after simulation. I think something adjacent would be better, but I also don't think it's gonna happen either. I think just based off like popularity and whatnot, just more more financially, not critically.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this in one of the previous retrospective podcasts, is that like I think they just need a financial hit before they decide to go in for another sequel. Like I think that's what they'd be looking for at this point, and I don't think Prey was that, right? Like I don't think Prey
did not
like very well for them. So I think they're gonna have to keep throwing new IPs at the wall until they like have that smash hit.
Yeah,
and then you will start to see sequels. Hopeful that Redfall's it. I think I already mentioned this. I feel like it's gotten better as we've gotten closer to release, but I do think that still like maybe Redfall didn't have the strongest marketing behind it. So I'm really hopeful that it that Game Pass like helps it knock it out of the park, and then we see some serious sequels from them. But until that happens, I think we're gonna just keep seeing new IPs from Arkane.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think Redfall just hasn't had. It's just not showing itself very well. It's like, that's the way I see it. Maybe just because the game's not very good. Hopefully that's not the case.
Well, Deathloop was the same way, and Deathloop was amazing. Like I feel like I didn't see a lot of Deathloop.
That is a very good point. But to bring in this, like I was just talking to Briggs, who joined us for the Dishonored episode, and he's like, "Oh man, I finally just checked out some Redfall trailers, and like, I don't know, don't really like the look of that very much." I'm like, yeah, that's kind of fair. I'm excited for the open world. He's like, oh, it's an open world game? Like I didn't even get that. So I feel like there's definitely been some marketing woes with that game. So we only have 7 days to wait until we can confirm something.
And how did Deathloop do sales wise?
I think it did pretty well. I think it did pretty well, and I think the timing too of it was on PlayStation, PC. A bunch of people checked it out, and then like 1 year later it came back. It hit Game Pass. Now that's part of it, like Xbox Studios and all that. And then it had like a little tiny bit of DLC in there. So I think it kind of had a nice second wind for it. Still not reached Dishonored levels in terms of popularity, but definitely was an improvement from Prey, Dishonored 2, and Dishonored Death of the Outsider for sure.
I always wonder, because that's what stopped me from Prey and from Deathloop. I always just wonder, and I guess it's an unfortunate state that gaming's in, where it always felt like, games used to be, you had this like the fall and spring break, and then the rest of the time there wasn't big games, but now there's just always big games. So I always feel like those games are always coming out, like even Redfall, that's coming out next week with Star Wars Jedi Survivor, right? And even if it doesn't end up being the same quality game, that first game sold boatloads, so right away people are going to go jump to that as far as like a GA audience, right? So it's just tough that there always used to be these pockets back in the day where if like, oh, no games releasing, and some companies would take advantage of that and they drop like a banger game, and like it would jump on and sales would start to grow. But it's like you can't do that because of game delays now. It's almost like every month for the most part. There's like maybe 2 months out of the year that have just some indie games or small ones, but just feel like every month it's like May, June, July. Oh, there's something. There's no more the let's just wait till fall. And even releasing in fall like a Deathloop did, that was a good thing. It sold better than the other ones. But yeah, that's still a tough market because in fall there's just so much, just including the generic every year COD and sports titles that come out that some people have to like, that's their game, right? So it's I feel like they always put these in. I think that's why I never end up playing Prey until now, because it's just like, well, I got these other games that I can't be buying 4 games at a time, so I'll wait for it. And then what happens is you wait, and then it's great to play on Game Pass. I'm very happy about Game Pass, but for sales. But again, who knows what they're looking for barometer success now, right? With Game Pass, with Redfall, that's a completely different thing.
Totally
it could
changes it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that could be more like streaming, the amount of downloads and stuff that could change what they invest in. So
they gotta start dropping in like July or August. Like, just get out of the way of everything. Like, I think if they're not like being like have to go up against these other like temple games, like they're going up against a fucking Star Wars game.
yeah.
Like,
It's the same week. It's within 7 days, and it's just it's like because I feel like it's
Kingdom in 2 weeks.
yeah.
yeah, it's just like
Dead
forgot
Island
about
2
Kingdom, yeah.
finally
It's
just
like
came
they
out, which is
keep
like
doing this.
similar looking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did.
It's not up to them. It's here that's like publishers and like obviously like when the game goes gold. But like,
I think Redfall was supposed to be out last summer, so it
Yeah,
was
it was,
aiming
yeah.
for that, but then it just didn't happen, obviously.
yeah.
How's Dead Island 2 and do, anyways? Like,
It
reviews
seems like
wise.
seems like it's kind of mid.
Okay,
Are-
that's what I
like they're
figured.
having fun
But,
with
like,
it, but it's like, oh, it's a
yeah,
fun game while
it's a fun
I'm
mid.
waiting for other
Yeah.
games to come out.
Okay, that's exactly what we all thought.
Don't
it was.
drop
I don't
what
think
you're
it's
doing.
like.
Yeah.
I was worried if that
Good
game
Pass game.
if that game blew up and everyone was playing it and like, damn, I'm playing this zombie game. I don't know. I feel like it would have eaten Redfall's launch a little bit. So I don't think that has
100%,
happened,
yeah.
but we'll see how Star Wars, if that takes it probably will take the conversation. Let's be real. But we will be back to talk
Not worried
about
about that.
Redfall. Any final thoughts on Prey from you guys here, or any just kind of arcane thoughts from you two boys as we've gone on this fantastic journey now that we're at the end?
You know, Dylan, I think you said it when we did Death of the Outsider, because that was the last Arkane game that you came across. But I agree with you. I think Arkane is my favorite gaming studio by far. I have
Love
played
it.
all their games now, and I have been very, very impressed by every single one. Just like the growth too, and like how, like especially we've gone through all their games now, just seeing what they've taken from their previous titles and improved upon it, or just innovated in those things. And like me playing Prey and seeing things that were in Deathloop, or maybe like major inspirations from it, whether I have Morgan talking to myself from like a previous version, it's like, hey man, this is just like what Colt did in Deathloop. Like, that's not a bad thing at all. Like, they really have their style, whether it's the art style or just the way that they tell stories in the world building, side quests, all that other things with great side characters, all that stuff. Really, really fun. Just game engine, like the way that you navigate the world is so fun. And yeah, I love their titles. I'm excited to just like sit down and look at my rankings and split some hairs on where I think some is better than others, and I'm sure we'll have some good conversations about that, maybe some debates. But yeah, I'm very impressed by their catalog, and a couple titles that I didn't even know existed, like the Arxes of the world or the Dark Messiahs. But
Yeah.
definitely glad I just got to see their origins, because yeah, I love Arkane. I love Arkane games. And yeah, after Redfall, my PC can't run it. I checked the gaming specs.
That's
My
so sad.
CPU and the graphics card, to add insult to injury, cannot run the minimum requirements. Even going through Prey, there were some moments when I was slogging along in the 10 FPS range. But yeah, I eventually I'll be able to play
Redfall's not much
Redfall.
higher than that anyway, 30 capped. So
Yeah, right.
good
I forgot about that. Yeah.
I'll be following them though, regardless, no matter what happens.
Yeah, I don't think I'll go as high as to say my favorite, but they are in my favorites, like easily top 5 developers, or developers of all time. And going back through has been really cool. Like, I want to do more of these, just like retrospective, like history lessons on.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I was about to say, let's open this damn door. And of all of the developers I could have thought of doing this as like a kickoff to this, they were like an absolutely amazing one, because they have shown their DNA through every single game. It like carries through from their first game. Like, you can go straight from Arcs to this and see the connection. You know what I mean? It's not like they have evolved, but it's not like they've changed so much in their design philosophy over the years that you feel like this is a completely different company. Like, I some of my favorites of all time, I just feel like I look back at like where they started and where they are now, and I'm like, this is unrecognizably the same company. Whereas like there is so many key factors about what makes an Arkane game, and I don't think they ever lost that over time. Whether those be the good things or the bad things, I feel like they have stayed true to their their design philosophy, and I respect the hell out of it because what they do is so incredibly cool. And it'll be really interesting to see now that this split has happened with these developers, or with this company, and like there's the Weird Wests of the world now. We're gonna see kind of like what do you, maybe you remember the name of that developer? I can't remember the name of it.
Wolfeye Studios.
Wolfeye, like it'll be really interesting to see now, like if Wolfeye is going to be what we knew Arkane to be in the past going forward. I'm very curious to see how these kind of two companies develop side by side now, and see how that kind of original soul of what Arkane is, if it's still there, even, right? Like
it was a Weird West
first
for me, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I agree as well. So that's why I'm very curious to see if like what Arkane going forward is going to be now, because they have lost kind of that person.
Yeah.
That has been maybe the defining factor in a lot of their decisions. But from what we have played, like they're all in some of my favorite games of all time. Even the ones that I'm like, man, I've got so pissed off at Ark so many different times. Dark Messiah has so many weird issues about it, but those games are so fucking cool in their own way too. Like,
yes,
it's really hard to just, I don't know, to be too hard on them, even though I wanted to be the cynical person coming into the room and being like, all right, this is great, but I couldn't put too many buts behind any of these games.
What was it? The Occam Stones? Is that
fuck
the
those things, man?
Don't bring it up, man.
Yeah.
Travis, anything you want to say in closing here about Prey?
No, it was a fun first outing. I'll be excited to jump into some of the other ones I've wanted to. Deathloop's the next on the list whenever I get a free time at some point in my life. But no, it was a good first outing that at least I understand some of the hype behind. I can't fully appreciate because I'm only the one toe into the world, but I could see where it could grow and stuff like that. So it was a good time.
Yes, well, I mean, Travis, thank you for joining us today. Dante and Kirkland, thank you guys for dedicating all your gaming in the first 4 months of this year to playing through every single Arkane game. This is just like a dream come true. This has been like just my favorite time of podcasting. I've been so happy to go through all these things. And yeah, I can't believe it. Redfall, now we've led right into Redfall, so very excited to break that down. And then I don't know what we're going to do with the rankings at this point because it's tricky. Kirkland can't play Redfall, but like we won't be able to do the rankings before Redfall. So I don't know what we're going to do. I'm just going to push that down the road a little bit, and we'll try to get to the rankings as soon as we can. Maybe we'll just do it. We'll kind of leave Redfall out and come back to that later, but we'll have to record that a bit later because then I'm going away for a bit. So we'll figure it out. Stay tuned. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this, for listening through the Arkane Retrospective. Go back and check out the episodes you missed. They're all great discussions there, and you will hear from us shortly on Redfall. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.